This is Jae-woo, and he was not having the best day. He just got into the biggest hunter academy, but in the worst class where nobody had any talent. On the very first day, the bullies dragged him into a storage room to mess with him. Suddenly everyone ran out of there like they had seen a demon. But it wasn't a demon, it was Jae-woo releasing a terrifying power that nobody had ever seen before. On top of that scary power, the guy is also a master swordsman, and has insane strength. He's so strong that during a dungeon test, a boss appeared out of nowhere, and things got out of control, but he was completely calm. He just walked up to the boss and took it down with a single punch. Everyone was left completely confused about how a student from the worst class killed a monster, so overpowered that even the teachers couldn't handle it. What nobody knew is that Jae-woo is the reincarnation of the greatest hunter in history. In his past life, he sacrificed himself to save the world. 42 years later, he woke up in this body in a hospital with no idea what was going on. Looking in the mirror, he saw that his face was completely different. The last time he saw the city, it was completely destroyed with people scattered across the streets. But now, looking through the window, the city had tall buildings standing and was full of healthy people walking around. He was moved because he saw that his sacrifice was worth it. But the joy didn't last long. Everything started shaking out of nowhere, and he went outside to see what was happening. Getting into the middle of the crowd, he spotted a monster portal. A young hunter named Go Yoon-chae was fighting a monster right in the middle of the street, surrounded by cameras and people cheering like it was a show. Hunting monsters had become entertainment. Nobody cared about the risks anymore. Nobody followed the rules he created. Jae-woo knocked the camera down right away, called the guards insane, and called out Yoon-chae in front of everyone for doing something so dangerous near people. But she didn't give a damn about what he said and just walked away, leaving him talking to himself. With the city so different and not knowing anything, Jae-woo remembered something. Before dying, his partner Bae Woo-shik had said he was going to create an academy to train the new generation. He went to the school and saw a giant portrait of himself right at the entrance. He walked in pretending to be a transfer student. When he came face to face with Woo-shik, the old director didn't believe him at all, until he dropped some dirt that only the two of them knew. The woman Woo-shik chased after for years and got rejected by over and over. Since only Jae-woo knew about that, Woo-shik was shocked and asked how he came back in the body of some kid, but the MC had no idea either. They spent some time talking about how much the world had changed, and how the old rules nobody follows anymore. But the main problem was something else. Jae-woo's sword was locked away in the storage of another old partner, Sok-do, who is now Go Yoon-chae's grandfather. The same girl Jae-woo had just argued with on the street. The plan was simple: get into the academy, get close to Yoon-chae, and get the sword back. Woo-shik handed over the enrollment papers with a sigh. The director asked him not to be too hard on the students, and the MC told him to relax because he planned to join Class E just to not draw any attention. The next day, at the academy, someone was trying to find the right classroom. It was the protagonist, and joining a class again actually made him nervous. He told himself not to stand out too much while he looked for Go Yoon-chae. Then a girl asked what he was doing blocking the classroom door. She told him that if he wasn't going in, he should move because he was in the way. The MC apologized and said he was heading in now. But then for some reason the girl leaned in close to his face, and he immediately felt awkward. She asked if he was the dog from yesterday. That left the protagonist confused. As she walked in, she said she didn't expect the transfer student to be him, but it wasn't her problem. The MC asked why she kept calling him a dog, but she gave no answer and just left him standing there even more confused. He could only think that kids these days were hard to understand. Once he entered, he felt everyone staring at him. The whole class had turned to look. Some boys whispered, asking if the new guy was the dog from yesterday. A few girls were saying the same thing. The MC wondered what was going on. It was his first day, yet everyone already knew him. Still, he decided to ignore it, and reminded himself he came here for his weapon, not anything else. While searching for a seat, something caught him off guard. There was a bouquet on his desk with a note from Woo-shik, congratulating him. The MC stared at it, wondering if new students really got things like this. After sitting down, he muttered that it was a waste of money. A second later, loud shouting made him look up. Someone was storming in while complaining about a teacher. It was a boy grumbling that his teacher forced him to come to class. As soon as he walked in, the room went tense. The MC thought kids really hadn't changed. They still acted like they owned the place. Then the boy noticed him and looked surprised. A grin spread across his face like he'd just found a new toy. He walked over saying he couldn't believe the protagonist was in his class. The dog from yesterday had ended up right here with him. He said he never expected that after the MC messed with Go Yoon-chae and talked trash about hunters. The protagonist asked how he even knew all that. The boy said the MC's video was all over the place, leaving the protagonist wondering what he was talking about. Then the boy smacked him and said it was crazy that someone who said all that still got into the academy. He mocked the MC for being only E rank and causing trouble with Yoon-chae, and the protagonist started losing patience. Then the boy suddenly held out a hand and said it was nice to meet him. He introduced himself as Ju-seok, and acted like the MC should already know who he was. The protagonist's face tightened as he remembered Woshek telling him to put up with the insults. Even so, he reached out too and gave his own name. That only made Jusok laugh, saying his parents must have been idiots to name him after a famous hunter. The MC forced a smile while telling himself not to punch the kid. Jusok then asked what it was like seeing Goat Yunche up close. He started talking about her body and said her face was pretty good for someone her age. Then he laughed again, saying that just because she was a director's granddaughter didn't mean she could act so proud. He admits Yunche would be his type if not for all her issues, and that hard look in her eyes. Then someone cuts in and tells Jusok to stop. That instantly catches both Junwoo and Jusok off guard. It was the same girl from earlier, and Jusok asks why she's bringing this up again. She fires back, telling him to look in a mirror before judging anyone else. That sets him off. He snaps, asking if she's crazy, saying he ignored it before, but now she's crossed the line. The girl doesn't back down. She says they're both in Class E, so they're both trash. Jusok argues he's nothing like her, because he used to be in Class B. She says that means nothing if he can't even use his own powers right. She adds that the only reason he's still at school must be his father's influence. Without it, he would have been kicked out already. That makes Jusok furious. He lunges at her and tries to slap her. She squeezes her eyes shut, clearly scared. But a second later, Jusok looks stunned. He's suddenly flat on the floor. The whole class freezes, shocked that Junwoo actually stepped in. Jusok glares up and asks if Mim Junwoo has lost his mind. Junwoo just stares back like it was nothing. Still in disbelief, Jusok asks if he really did that. Junwoo tells him that if he wants, he can get knocked down again. Jusok stands up and asks if Junwoo really wants trouble on his first day. He yells that he'll beat him until he learns his place in the school. Junwoo only laughs, not taking him seriously at all. Then, annoyed, he asks Jusok if he's ever been in real danger to talk that big. Jusok ignores the question and charges at him. Junwoo slips past him easily, thinking the punch was awful. His form is so bad that even a goblin could beat him. Before it goes any further, someone walks in. A teacher enters and asks what her students are doing. Jusok clicks his tongue, annoyed that she showed up right in the middle of it. As he heads out, he says he'll find Mim Junwoo later. He tells Junwoo to meet him behind the school if he wants to have some fun. A few hours later, Woshek looks irritated. He asks how Junwoo already caused trouble on day 1. Junwoo says he's actually been holding back a lot. Woshek says he already cleaned up this mess, but he has no idea what Jusok might do next. Junwoo asks what he means. Woshek explains that Jusok is the son of a minister in the subjugation department. Because his father has power, the kid gets away with anything. Junwoo says that explains why Jusok turned out like that, and Woshek warns him to be careful. If he fights Jusok again, Woshek won't be able to help. Junwoo says he gets it and will deal with it his own way. Once outside the office, he lets out a sigh. Then the girl from before walks up and asks why he did that, catching him off guard. She asks if he even knows who he messed with. Junwoo says he doesn't care, he just can't stand rude kids. Then he asks why she started arguing with Jusok when he was only talking about Yunche. Right after that, Junwoo pauses. She looks a lot like the person he saw during the subjugation. He checks the name on her badge, Go Hyun. Junwoo asks if she's Yunche's little sister, and she says yes. He thinks this could work for his plan, but then she says she's not really treated as Yunche's sister, because they have different mothers. Her father's side never accepted her as part of the family. That makes things awkward, and Junwoo asks if she at least talks to her grandfather. She says they get along great. He's the one who had her removed from the family registry. With that, all of Junwoo's hopes crash. Hyun apologizes, and says that since she isn't part of the family, he won't get any reward for helping her. She tells him that as a new student he'd be better off finding someone to depend on, instead of staying alone. She admits she thought he was different, but says he's just like everyone else, only caring about status. Junwoo shoots back that she's no better, since she judged him just for being a special admission student. He says arguing over family background and special entry is stupid, especially for kids. Hyun tells him to wait soon. He'll learn what being a special student really means at this academy. Junwoo doesn't care and keeps walking. Watching him leave, she feels a little embarrassed about the whole exchange. Elsewhere, Junwoo thinks getting close to Yunche would be easy, but now he'll need another plan. Just then, someone steps up behind him. The guy asks if he's Junwoo, the special student from Class E. Junwoo turns, wondering who he is, and asks what he wants. A few boys nearby laugh while staring at him. Then even more students start gathering. Before long, Junwoo is surrounded by 5 guys in the hallway. One of them tells him to come along, unless he wants to be embarrassed in front of everyone. Seeing where this is headed, Junwoo feels a headache coming on. Inside a warehouse on school grounds, he follows the group that dragged him there. The place reeks, and Junwoo wonders if this is their hideout. Then someone says their guest finally made it. It was Jusok. He says he'll ask one thing before the 6 of them make memories. Junwoo won't forget. He wants to know why a special admission student thought he could challenge him. Junwoo asks why everyone keeps calling him a special student like it's such a big deal. That catches Jun-sook off guard. He says someone who got in through connections shouldn't talk like he's important. Jun-sook adds that if he wasn't being punished, he'd handle this himself. Instead, his friends will do it. Then he orders them to start. One of the boys rushes in with a kick. Junwoo dodges it with ease. He almost looks confused when the guy falls on his own. Xiaobei-sok laughs and says Junwoo is good at dodging. Then the others rush him too, yelling that they'll teach him a lesson. Junwoo slips past another attack without any trouble. As he keeps avoiding them, he asks if the teachers never taught them basic combat. The same guy from before charges in again, yelling at him to shut up. This time Junwoo doesn't move away. He drives a knee straight into the guy's face. He thinks it's ridiculous that they can't even handle the basics. Blood pours from the boy's nose. Then he drops to the floor. The rest freeze, shocked that Junwoo took him down so easily. Junwoo asks why nobody else is coming at him, and reminds them Junwoo-sok promised unforgettable memories. That only makes Junwoo-sok even more furious, and he curses at Junwoo. Junwoo, getting fired up, says that if they're going to do this, they should do it right. Somewhere else, Go-I-Hyun walks through the halls, still complaining about Junwoo. She keeps thinking about him calling her words ridiculous. Annoyed, she says he talked big without knowing anything. Then she overhears someone say Junwoo-sok's group dragged Junwoo away. Others say his school life is already over and that he's the special student who got abandoned the fastest. Someone asks if the teachers were told, but another student says nobody wants to get involved. Ah-hyun says Junwoo deserves it for acting like he's above everyone. But then his words to her come back to mind. She suddenly stops. Then she breaks into a run. Back in the warehouse, Junwoo faces the three boys who brought him there. Junwoo-sok snaps at them, asking if they're messing around when all they have to do is rush in and hit him. But they're scared. Junwoo dropped the strongest one with a single blow. Junwoo says they're afraid for nothing, since he didn't do anything special. He adds that their skill and mindset are like little kids. That hits Junwoo-sok hard. He turns to his friends and tells them to use their abilities against Junwoo. One of them warns that if they use their powers, they'll get caught and expelled. Junwoo-sok says that only matters if they get caught. So they get ready to attack again, raising the bracelets on their wrists. Junwoo realizes they're using the same kind of item as Go Yun-chae, probably because carrying swords around is harder. Even then the boys hesitate and can't bring themselves to move. Seeing that, Junwoo-sok jumps in himself. Calling them cowards, he shows his bracelet and activates something that lets him use his powers. One of the boys warns that he'll be in serious trouble if he's caught, but Junwoo-sok tells him to shut up. After removing the item, the system says his skill rank is D, and his abilities are now active. Our hero just watches without changing his expression. A message pops up saying the owner has been given a spear. Junwoo-sok says he'll make our hero beg and see how long he can hold out. The protagonist calls him a kid, and asks if he even knows how to use abilities. One of the others blurts out that the protagonist must be stupid. Junwoo-sok already has a weapon. The MC grabs a broom and asks if summoning an item is what Junwoo-sok calls an ability. He adds that at least someone there actually gets it. Then our big guy levels the broom at Junwoo-sok. Clearly mad, he asks how this brat dared use an ability on someone outside a dungeon. At the academy office, someone mentions hearing that one of her new students already caused trouble. He says the kid had nerve, picking a fight with Junwoo-sok from Class B, and wonders why a special student with no hunter talent was put in Class E. The woman says that's not true. The man looks confused, and she tells him he has it wrong. She explains he was placed there because he never took the aptitude test, which only confuses him more. People who skip that test usually have combat power too high to measure, so he asks if the boy was really left out of evaluation. Until now, only Go Yun-chae had that status. He wonders if they're on the same level, then says someone like that should never be in the lowest class. She explains the director personally ordered the MC into Class E so he wouldn't attract attention. The man finds that odd since hunters usually want to stand out, but she says she doesn't know why. Before she can say more, someone suddenly shouts her name. It's Go H-run, and the woman quickly asks what happened. Our heroine says the MC is in trouble. Back at the fight, the protagonist's broom keeps colliding with Jurbo-kal's spear. Jurbo-kal's Gosiakaliles Gatamir Intercision, the Erbro-kal's Drakal, Favitologis for Parsenarive. Take a wonder scopals for Parskipelli, for Robi like Sapalpi no Sanda to get a word Sitchimase. One of the boys can't understand it. Using that spear, Jurbo-kalwal should be able to fight someone at Baron level. But the protagonist stops every strike, and the broom still hasn't snapped. Frustrated, Jurbo-kalwa yells asking why he can't beat an E rank. He swings again, but our hero still looks completely calm. Jurbo-kalwa can to call the ticking puri. T. Jeremis his loudly while their spa will be Coleman. One of the others snaps back, telling the protagonist to shut up because he's just a special admission student. The MC explains that an ability's traits come from the weapon's power. As he dodges with ease, he asks what kind of core Jurbo-kalmulsok thinks that weapon has. Jurbo-kalmulsok only gets madder, and tells him to go to hell. That spear's core was a gift from his father, and it's the reason he got into the academy. After graduation, he was almost sure he'd become a hunter, and if he did well enough, he might even join the student council. But now he's getting pushed back by a special student ranked E. Then our hero smacks Jurwo-sok's hand with the broom. The system announces that the user has lost his weapon and must recover it at once, leaving the boy stunned. He freezes because the protagonist is now holding Jurwo-sok's spear. Then he tells the kid to watch closely and learn how a real hunter uses a weapon. But suddenly, the whole building goes dark. The boys panic, asking what's going on. One says it feels like night fell out of nowhere, and then the light slowly comes back. One of them tells the others to look at the ground. They all go pale when they see their shadows peeling away from their bodies. The boy our hero hit just stands there in shock, feeling like something was stolen from him, then looks around for the shadows after they vanish. Dark energy starts rising around our hero. Terrified, the extra can barely believe it. He wonders if our hero is using the same core that was inside the spear. That thought hits harder when our big guy starts laughing, and corrupted energy pours out of him. The extra tries to back away and run, but he's already wet himself from fear. When our hero points the spear at his neck, Jurwo-sok begs for his life. Cold-eyed, the protagonist gets ready to strike, then drives the spear toward him. Seeing that, the extra breaks down crying and tries to escape. But the system shuts the weapon down after a minute, and the spear starts fading away. Jurwo-sok lies passed out. Our big guy starts kicking him, telling the extra to wake up already. The boy slowly opens his eyes, but the second he sees the MC, he screams. The protagonist says he hasn't even done anything, so the boy should stand up. The extra tries to get to his feet, still staring at the protagonist in fear. Our hero calls Jurwo-sok a child, and tells him to answer the question. The MC says weapons and abilities are meant for catching monsters, then asks if using them outside a dungeon isn't dangerous. Jurwo-sok says nothing. Our big guy presses him for an answer, and the extra finally admits it. Yes, it's very dangerous. The protagonist warns that if he ever sees him use that again, there will be punishment. Then he turns to the boy who helped corner him, and tells him to step forward. He orders the extra to throw a few more punches at him, which leaves the guy confused. Jurwo-sok says he wants the strongest punch, otherwise everyone will laugh at him for picking on a special student and still losing. The boy thanks him but asks why, and the MC says he doesn't want his identity to be exposed. The extra asks if that's really okay, and Junhyo says it better be his hardest punch. If it doesn't hurt, everyone there gets beaten. After hearing that, the guy gets ready to hit our hero. The moment his fist connects with the protagonist's face, the teachers rush into the warehouse. Seeing the blood on the floor, the woman says the MC is bleeding. Yubin says they've gone too far, especially since he transferred in today, but the extra blurts out that the blood on the ground is his. The teacher orders the student to come to the office. Then she tells Go Aijian to take our big guy to the infirmary, and the girl agrees. A few minutes later, the protagonist mutters that this body is way weaker than he expected. He looks at the girl and asks what she's doing when they were supposed to be heading to the infirmary. She stays silent. The MC tells her not to worry because he'll take care of it himself, and Ayun asks who he really is. He says he's just a normal student getting what he deserves, but she tells him to stop pretending. She saw everything. A little earlier, a teacher had sent her to check behind the academy. While searching alone, she heard a bunch of loud voices and went to see what was happening. What she saw our big guy do to the others scared her. Ayun asks why someone like him is in Class E when he could be in the top class, but the protagonist says it's none of her business. He doesn't want attention, so she should forget everything she saw. Go Xiaobei-jun says he's right, and that she's just like him. That leaves the protagonist confused. She admits she judged him just because he was a special student, and even looked down on him. Then she apologizes. Our hero says it's fine, and just wants to go to the infirmary, but Oh Xiaobei-jun says she still needs to ask something. She asks for his help because she wants to join the student council. Surprised, the protagonist asks her to say that again. Dae Yunsheng explains that she needs a sponsor to get in, and the MC asks if that means using the sponsor for personal gain. She says yes, and that's why nobody wants to back her. Just as she's about to ask him, he turns her down, saying he's too busy. Dae Yunsheng says she won't ask for free. If there's anything he wants, she'll do it. He says what he wants isn't something she can give. She keeps throwing out offers, and he rejects them all, until she says she can introduce him to Yunche. That makes the MC stop, and ask if she's serious. He asks how that's possible, when Yunche was kicked out of her home, but the girl says that's not what she means. She pauses, making a funny face while choosing her words. Then A Yunsheng smiles and says her sister is on the student council, so if she gets in she can arrange a meeting. The MC reacts oddly and tells her to forget it. He'll handle things himself. But right then, his whole body starts to feel dizzy. He collapses, and the girl panics, asking what's wrong. The protagonist says he's been saying for a while now that he needs to go to the infirmary. Elsewhere, an emergency meeting is being held at the Hunter Academy. A teacher says this is the second time Jurwo-sok has used his power, and that alone is enough to expel him. Another agrees. They can't ignore it this time. The first teacher backs that up, saying he saw it himself. One of the men asks what the academy director thinks about all this. Woo-shok turns to the teacher who brought Naeun in. He asks if Jurwo-sok and his group really attacked the protagonist, and she says yes, she saw it. To be sure, he asks again if she witnessed it herself. She gives the same answer. Then the director suddenly laughs and thanks the protagonist for getting beaten up, leaving the teacher stunned. But he quickly turns serious. Using abilities is banned, and since this isn't the first time, Jae-Sok has to be punished. By the rules, he should be expelled, but someone cuts in. He says he has something important to add, and Woo-shek lets him speak. Without a hint of shame, the man argues that expulsion is way too harsh. When Woo-shek asks why, he says this kind of behavior isn't strange for a teenager. Yubin snaps back that this was far beyond a simple mistake. It could have caused a disaster. The man keeps defending Jo-sok, saying the boy is gifted and could become one of the academy's best. Then he asks if she's really willing to ruin that over one error. Even while admitting Jo-sok was wrong and made a serious mistake, he insists expulsion is too much. In his view, a week-long suspension is enough to teach him a lesson. Woo-shek says he gets what Jo-min is saying, and Jo-sok's punishment will be decided later. After that, he says they've talked enough, and ends the meeting. The teachers begin filing out of the room. Meanwhile, the shameless man leaves with a smug look on his face, glancing at his phone before making a call. The person answering is the minister, Jo-sok's father. Jo-min tells him the punishment will likely be just a suspension, and that Jo-sok still has the best shot at joining the student council. In a cold voice, he adds that he'll make the MC pay, and with the end-of-month evaluation coming up, that won't be hard. 3 days have passed since school started, and the protagonist still hasn't seen Yoon-chae. He also thinks Class E is packed with hopeless students who have no talent for hunting, and the lessons are worthless. For now, there's nothing here for him to shine in. Before he can finish that thought, someone smacks him on the head. This is the same bullying scene from the start, and the ones messing with him are the same guys he beat up in the warehouse. To everyone else, it looks like he's become their errand boy, but that's not what's really going on. The student who hit him calls him pathetic, and tells him to come along if he wants to learn something. Then the former extras head out of the classroom, with the protagonist following them into the hall. As soon as he says a word, the two boys jump. He calmly tells them that slap actually hurt. All three quickly apologize. He points out that they're taking their anger out on him, but one of them rushes to deny it. Yoon-chae just said it had to look real. The protagonist asks if they handled what he told them to do, and the boy admits it wasn't easy for first years to get close to the student council, so he asks if they learned anything at all, and they say they found a few things. One rumor says Yoon-chae almost never comes to school. The MC asks if that's all. They add that she has almost no friends, and the only person close to her is another student council member named Jong-yoon. That finally sounds useful, so he asks where Jong-yoon is. The boys admit Jong-yoon barely comes to school either, and that sets him off. He tells them to get lost. They apologize again and promise better info next time. As a headache starts building, he realizes someone is standing behind him. It's Ion. She says this approach won't work, and when he sees her, he asks if she's been following him. She explains that Jong-yeon is an official student council member, so meeting him won't be easy. The MC asks why they're so hard to reach when the student council doesn't seem like that big a deal. Ion says it matters a lot because only the top students get in. He shrugs it off. They're still just students. She explains that joining the council means becoming a hunter right away and getting to take part in real missions. On top of that, every member comes from a powerful family, so even the teachers treat them carefully. Inside the academy, they basically hold all the power. At the rate he's going, she says, he won't even catch a trace of Go Yoon-chae. Jang Bao asks if there's any other way to find her. Isa then starts to suggest joining the student council, but he shuts it down right away. Confused, she asks why he keeps refusing. He reminds her that she herself said only talented people can stand out, and she doesn't have that talent. Aeyuan says he just needs to teach her, and promises she'll work hard. That makes him laugh. Then he warns her that learning from him would bring unbearable pain. The two go quiet for a moment. Then he says he doesn't know why she wants into the council so badly, and tells her not to chase something beyond her reach. But Aeyuan says she doesn't care. That catches Jangbo off guard. She says if she can't get into the council, she'd rather leave for another world, and she begs him to train her. She wants to learn everything about subjugation, and she's ready to devote herself to training, no matter what. He starts walking away, saying the break is over, but she calls after him and asks for an answer. He smiles to himself, thinking she's got guts. It's been a long time since he's seen that kind of resolve, and he figures she may be useful later. Somewhere else, a teacher is praising her students and asking if they already know about the monthly evaluation. She tells them to take it seriously, since their scores were bad last month. Just as she's about to keep going, someone cuts in and apologizes for interrupting the class. It's that shameless teacher, and he says he's here to announce a change to the next monthly test. He reveals that first-year students will take a hands-on exam inside a dungeon. The whole class is stunned. Our heroine can hardly believe it, and the protagonist looks seriously upset. The teacher protests that this can't be right, but the man tells her not to raise her voice in front of the students. Yubin argues that a practical dungeon test is too much, and he fires back by asking if she thinks Class E can't handle it. She has no answer. He says it doesn't matter anyway. The decision is final, and keeping students out of proper training would be discrimination. Then he asks how long they plan to stay cut off from the academy's main activities, when students need these basics to become hunters. The MC thinks this is insane. These kids know almost nothing. They're basically children. No normal teacher would send them into a dungeon unless something else was going on. The man says anyone who doesn't want to take the test can give up and attend remedial classes instead. Then, staring right at the protagonist, he adds that withdrawing from the exam will get him expelled. As he leaves, he says he'll personally supervise the evaluation. The protagonist is sure they're hiding something. That teacher couldn't pull this off alone. Someone powerful has to be backing him. Later in the director's office, Woshik confirms his guess. The one behind this is Korea's Minister of Civilization. The MC says he's been blacklisted because of Jo Seok, and Woshik apologizes, saying he tried to stop it. But Myeonjin is too important to the academy, and too tied to its past, so his hands were tied. The protagonist says he understands. Woshik keeps explaining, but the protagonist cuts him off. He's heard enough and doesn't want any more excuses. The director asks how he plans to get through this. The MC says the answer is simple. He'll take the exam. He still hasn't found Jo Seok, so getting expelled isn't an option. Then he looks at Woshik and asks if he has any weapon he can use. Woshik says no. The MC points out he can't go into a dungeon empty-handed, and asks for anything at all. But Woshik keeps refusing, saying items are too dangerous. That surprises him a little. He grabs Woshik's arm and asks if he's finally gotten bold enough to lie to him. Woshik denies it. Then the MC notices the ring on his finger and asks what that is. At that moment, the second biggest JOAT in the story realizes he's been found out, because that ring is one of the rarest items there is, the Ring of Patellus. The two start talking about it. The MC asks if Woshik still had it after all these 50 years. Woshik says he only started using it after his leader fell. That brings back the past, when the protagonist saved him and brought him into the team, even though he was nobody then. The MC asks what exactly he's doing. Then he takes the ring right off Woshik's hand and says he'll be borrowing it. The protagonist smiled, holding the item he used long ago before his defeat. Woshik asked if using it was really okay, since that meant he wasn't truly E-rank. The MC brushed it off. This dungeon was made for kids, so it wouldn't matter much. Just as he was about to leave, the director said he had one more thing to tell him. Our hero stopped and asked what it was. Woshik started to speak, but John Woo shut the door and left before he could finish. Left alone, the man wondered if he should just quit as academy president. Out in the hall, that shameless teacher was on the move. A moment later, he knocked on the door of the Hunter Academy's special department. When the door opened, what he found caught him off guard. Go Yoon-chae was inside. Surprised, he asked why she had come to school for the first time. She shot back, asking why he was barging into her room. Annoyed, he said teachers could enter whenever they wanted, and told her not to act proud just because she was on the council. After that, she said nothing. That silence made him feel awkward. Trying to keep it together, he said there would be a first-year evaluation, and the school wanted a student council member to supervise it. He added that this one would be a practical test. The girl asked if he was seriously making first-years take a practical exam. He said yes and asked if she was interested. She refused. When he asked if Chao Bei could get another council member instead, she said the others couldn't do it either. The shameless teacher asked if she meant the practical exam should be delayed. She said yes. If it couldn't happen without the council, then it should wait until next year. There was no benefit for them anyway. She added that if they paid her, she might think about it. He snapped, asking if being on the council made her think she was above everyone else. Junmin said he was the one who helped her rise at school and asked if she really thought she did it all alone. She told him not to dump his anger on her. Her grandfather was the one who judged him, not her. Then she added that he should treat the council members better too. Junmin was left speechless and asked where she had heard about his judgment. Before she could answer, someone walked in. The newcomer smiled, saying it was nice to see his teacher again, then asked if something important was going on. The man explained that he needed a council member to oversee the exam. The boy asked if Chas had accepted, and he admitted she hadn't. So the student offered to do it himself, since he had nothing important planned. Junmin asked if he really could help. The boy answered that of course he could. He was a student council member too. Junmin thought the student was a little hard to deal with and hesitated over giving him the job. Still, he approved it and told the boy to sign the paper and send it over. Go Yunqing watched quietly while the boy wore a suspicious smile. She asked what he'd do about his subjugation schedule. He said he'd just cancel it. Unlike her, he wasn't famous, so nobody would care. Chao Bei didn't get it. She asked why he wanted to help Professor Chao Bei when he clearly didn't like the man. The boy said he was taking the role so he could watch that professor. He didn't want the same accident from the past to happen again. He also wanted to see the test results, because he'd heard the boy from the hospital had entered the school as a first-year special admission. Chao Bei was puzzled. The way he talked about subjugations made him sound like he already knew all about them. He said he got curious, so he kept an eye on the protagonist. On his first day, that guy beat Josok's group and skipped the evaluation, just like she did. Then he asked if she wasn't curious about what kind of person the protagonist really was. Elsewhere, at the academy training grounds, our hero noticed that some students from classes C and D were missing. The B-rank students had joined in and looked way too eager to show off in front of the girls. In the MC's class, only he and one other student were taking part. Someone asked if just the two of them were entering the dungeon. It was Ayeon. As she got ready, she said it was better this way, since they wouldn't have to wait for their turn to fight. Our hero asked why she was there, and she said the answer was obvious. She was taking the test. Ayeon told him not to worry because she wouldn't be a burden. Junwoo replied that a low-level dungeon still wasn't easy. He told her to stop while he was still being nice, and warned that this test was set up from the start to make Class E quit. Ayeon didn't care. She reminded him she'd do anything to join the student council, and anyone aiming for the council couldn't fail this exam. He was about to answer when someone cut in and told the students to listen up. It was that shameless teacher. He said the test wasn't dangerous, but since it was still a school exam, nobody should relax. Then he explained that it would be held in a low-grade dungeon, and each group could have up to 8 members. After the teams sorted themselves out, Class A would go first and the others would wait. When someone stepped in, the teacher said everyone probably already knew him as a student council member. It was the boy from earlier, introducing himself as Kim Jong-yeon. Hearing that name, our hero was startled. It sounded familiar, like he'd seen him somewhere before. Then the shameless teacher looked at the protagonist and said that since Class E only had Junwoo and Ayusa, they would join Class 500. The council boy greeted the MC. The guys the protagonist had beaten before looked nervous, even though they tried to act tough. Our heroine pointed out that they were doing a terrible job pretending they were obviously scared. Other students complained that they were unlucky to be grouped with a special admission student. One boy asked why they had to team up with one, and a girl whined that it was like doing the mission with 2 members missing. One of the boys who got beaten by the MC apologized, but before he could keep going, the protagonist cut him off and said it wasn't a big deal. Then he asked for any information on the dungeon, and someone said they had gathered a little. A boy bowed and handed him a tablet, telling him to check the details. Everyone was stunned. Someone was bowing to the biggest loser in school. Then that same boy sneered, saying our hero was useless if he had to depend on others for information. A few hours later, at the cave entrance, Junman asked if the last team was ready. Hen said the freshmen should be able to figure out the routes and how to finish the mission. The teacher explained that the test would end once they defeated the dungeon boss. With a strange smile, he asked if anyone wanted to know anything else. The protagonist stayed quiet and watched him closely. Next, Jong-yoon announced that the final team could start, and the protagonist's group entered the dungeon. As they moved forward, our hero thought the dungeon seemed normal enough. It was filled with the usual cave monsters. Then a loud sound echoed through the dungeon, making the MC stop. A huge wave of rat-like monsters came rushing at the students. The group panicked, shouting that there were too many, and getting ready to fight. The system announced that they were now allowed to use their abilities. Janwo's face changed as he muttered that he wanted to see what these students could really do. One boy sent out a blast of wind. Another used a sniper-style combat skill. The last one triggered a berserk ability. Together, they barely kept the rat swarm back. One student kept firing air bullets at the creatures. That was just enough to stop the monsters from breaking through. The MC thought this was about what he expected. They could barely use their powers and didn't really understand them. The others weren't much better, just swinging their swords without any real plan. Only one person truly stood out. It was our heroine. Using a fire skill, flames swept over the monsters. At once they shrieked as they burned away. The MC noticed that Ai-yan actually knew how to use her power. Even without proper Class E lessons, she'd trained herself. He admitted she fought well for a kid, but she was still only a beginner. The other students were already worn out, wondering if this was really a low-level dungeon since the monsters kept pouring in. Right then, one rat lunged at a boy. At that moment, our hero activated the Patellus ring, and the system announced a skill was being used. The protagonist got ready to flick a stone. In the next second, the rat was blown apart by his attack. Its body slammed into the wall, and the boy just stared in confusion. The MC told him to be more careful and stop making reckless attacks. Instead, that jerk told Junwoo to shut up, and the girl claimed he was only trying to score points faster. Our big guy couldn't believe it. They were so clueless, they still didn't understand how bad things were. One student asked if Junwoo had really pulled that off, while the redhead admitted this dungeon was way tougher than expected. Junwoo let out a sigh. They were painfully weak, and they didn't even realize they had almost been wiped out. There was no way they could keep going. They were already spent, and they hadn't even been inside 5 minutes. At this point, the only one who might help was Goe-yeon, but even then, Junwoo knew he couldn't depend on her. He wanted to leave the others behind, but people were watching, and something about this dungeon felt wrong. So he looked at the shameless supervisor and asked if the dungeon didn't seem strange to him. There were way too many monsters, especially this close to the entrance. Something was clearly off, and they should stop the hunt and figure it out first. Junmin just sneered, asking if Junwoo was good for anything, then told him to stop butting in. While walking off, he called Junwoo arrogant and said not to overstep. He was the supervisor, so he would decide what happened. Junwoo shouted that if they kept this up, someone would get hurt, and he tried to keep talking, but the bastard cut him off and told the students to listen. If anyone was too tired to continue, they could drop out of the exam. No one answered. The students just stood there in awkward silence. The other shameless adults kept quiet too. Jungwon said that if Jungwon was scared, he should quit by himself instead of dragging everyone else down. He even warned that one more problem from Jungwon would get him kicked out of the exam on the spot. Then someone put a hand on our big guy's shoulder and told him not to worry. It was Jung Yoon. He said that if things got dangerous, he would step in. As he walked off, he added that even if he didn't look like much, he was on the student council, so Jungwon didn't need to worry. Junwoo watched him leave, still trying to make sense of everything. A few minutes later, the extras got excited, saying they had finally found the boss room. But the celebration died fast, and everyone suddenly went quiet. Junwoo sighed again. They were already scared before even seeing the boss. He headed to the door and said he'd open the boss room himself. Abane stepped in and said they'd do it together. Junwoo tried to say he could handle it alone, but she ignored that and stayed by his side. She told him he was probably laughing inside because everyone else was scared, but she wasn't. Junbao glanced away, trying to hide it. Then the two of them opened the boss room door together. The moment Junbao looked inside, he froze. A huge monster was lying on the ground, with red liquid leaking from its head. The boss was already dead, and the floor was covered in blood. One student asked if that was really the boss, and the others stared in shock, wondering if it was already dead. Junbao was confused too. He kept saying this dungeon was supposed to be unexplored. Our heroine looked at Junbao and asked if he knew what was going on. He said there had been an interference inside the dungeon, and immediately yelled for everyone to retreat. The students jumped in shock and asked why they had to run. Junwoo told them to get out now. There had been a dungeon interference. Then a massive shadow suddenly fell over Junwoo and our heroine. For the first time, even Junwoo felt real fear. The monster was enormous, and the students panicked and ran the second they saw its size. A dungeon interference happens when a stronger monster invades and kills the dungeon boss first. In a low-ranked dungeon, that was about the rarest thing possible. Our heroine looked terrified. Even our hero was shaken. The system identified the beast in front of him as a three-tailed tiger. Junwoo knew this was a disaster. A green rank boss had appeared in a purple rank dungeon. The students screamed as they ran, desperate to find the exit. But the beast ignored Junwoo and jumped at the others instead. It crashed down and wrecked everything around it. The teacher was terrified, while Hoon told everyone to get behind him. The system announced that authorization was granted, and rank 6 skills were now active. He could finally use his powers. A glow spread through the dungeon, coming from the boy's arm. Xiaobei's skill was Porcupine's Wrath. He called to Junwo, saying he couldn't beat a green rank enemy alone, and asked for help. That caught Junwo off guard. Why did this boy want his help? Hoon apologized and admitted he already knew Junwo had powers, since he passed without taking the entrance exam. Everyone was stunned, and one of the students asked if Junwo was like Cha. Junwo was speechless. A few days earlier, a system window had said his abilities couldn't be measured. Wushik had expected that and said Junwoo technically still passed. Junwoo answered that he didn't want attention. The man told him this was one of the few things he had almost no control over. If Junwoo wanted to stay unnoticed, the teachers would probably just ignore it. Then he added that when he said he could handle it, he really meant almost nobody would care enough to look into it. Junwoo muttered that he shouldn't have done that. Back in the dungeon, he rushed forward and said he'd help, however he could. Hoon thanked him and told him not to worry. Right after that, the tiger moved to attack them. For some reason, Hoon looked confused. As he prepared to block, he spotted an opening. He fired several mana spikes at the tiger. The beast tried to defend itself from Hoon's attack, but he gave it no time to recover and struck again right away. 2 spikes stabbed into the monster's body. That second hit sent the creature into a frenzy. One student said a student council member really was on another level, and a girl admitted they looked like children next to him. Then some of them looked at Junwoo and complained that he was doing nothing, while Hoon handled everything. One student even asked if Hoon was giving Junwoo special treatment, but the girl said that couldn't be it. Still, the boy said Junwoo had annoyed him from the start. He couldn't let him get away doing nothing. He had to figure out what was really going on. The third strongest Joe 8 member kept pushing forward, searching for chances to strike. He was baffled. He had never had a fight feel this smooth before. To him, beating a green rank boss this easily felt almost too good to be true. Then he passed by Junwoo's and got even more suspicious. Was Junwoo somehow making this happen while letting him take all the credit? But he dropped the thought when the tiger came at him again. At that moment, Junwoo casually flicked a rock into the monster. The tiger started getting dizzy. Our big guy was practically putting it to sleep. Now the boy finally got it. Every time the beast tried to close in, Junwoo used a skill to knock it off course. He had read about something like this before. Yunwoo was targeting weak spots, which should have been almost impossible unless you knew exactly how the monster would move. What shocked him most was that Junwoo was doing all of it without anyone noticing, and that made him wonder who Junwoo really was. Still, none of that mattered right now. They had to beat the tiger and get the students out. so he struck the monster in the head again, and that blow finished it off. The boy stared at the tiger's body, deep in thought. After seeing that fight, the other students were amazed. They kept saying someone from the student council was incredible, and that their senior was the best. The shameless supervisor laughed to himself. He had thought the incident from 2 years ago might happen again, but now it looked like everything would be fine. And if Junwo had really gotten an evaluation exemption for no reason, that could be used to throw him out of the academy. But Junwo stopped everyone, warning that the monster was still alive. Staying there was dangerous, so they needed to leave now. Then someone suddenly yelled at him to watch it. It was that same guy from earlier, saying Junwo was only talking like that to steal points. Then he jumped in front of the beast. He shouted that he wouldn't let Junwo take the credit, and that he'd land the final blow himself. Unfortunately for him, the tiger opened its eyes and pounced. And yes, it went straight for that idiot. Junwo could only think the guy was a complete fool. But then the second greatest Junwo jumped in front of him, and in the next instant, his arm was torn off. The boy coughed up a huge mouthful of blood. The one who caused it stood there in shock. The students and even the professor were horrified. As the boy collapsed, everyone cried out, asking if he was still alive. Then Junmun told everyone to run. When the students asked if he'd be okay, he told them to worry about themselves. Our heroine was terrified. A student council member had gone down in one hit, and she had no idea how to help. Before she could think any longer, the monster was already in front of her. She told herself to stay calm. The tiger feared fire, and that was one of her powers. But when she tried to attack, nothing happened. Fear had taken over. Her whole body shook so hard she couldn't move at all. Then the creature charged straight at her. Right then the system announced that explosive flow had been activated. A fist came flying toward the monster. It was our hero. One punch slammed into the tiger and sent it flying. The girl stared in shock. Had Junwoo really blasted it away with a single hit? That one punch launched the tiger far back. A second later, the protagonist moved out of there. The extra from before was crying beside our fallen goat. Honestly, he didn't seem evil, just stupid. Then someone grabbed him by the collar. It was our hero, telling him to quit messing around and carry him away if he didn't want him to die. The protagonist called the big guy over to help, while everyone else was told to stay hidden. Getting ready to fight, he blamed himself. If he hadn't stayed in the shadows, this could have ended much sooner. Now the creature was roaring right in his face. A moment later, it swung at him. Our goat dodged with ease. After that, the tiger started pulling sharp weapons from its body. It came at the MC with something like a spear, but he avoided it. At the same time, the system announced that weapon capacity had been activated. With flow active, the protagonist drove another punch into the monster. At this point, it really felt like the tiger had to be finished. And then our hero triggered another skill. It was actually the same one, but now he fired off several blows at once. The people watching were stunned that the protagonist was overpowering the tiger. Even our waifu couldn't take her eyes off her future husband. The shameless guy was confused too, watching the protagonist beat the tiger down. He couldn't understand it. Junwoo had seemed useless before, and now he looked like a totally different person. That only made him angrier, wondering if the protagonist had really passed without the test. From the way he fought, the protagonist looked stronger than the veterans, and he was even using an ancient weapon. Then someone yelled that using an ancient supernatural weapon was too dangerous. Our hero ignored him and kept pushing forward. He already knew the risk. The professor was obviously talking about the penalty. Every ancient weapon had one. Its effect changed depending on the weapon, and some could even kill the user. Even so, he kept using them because they were insanely powerful. The bracelet was simple to use and had great power without a penalty, but it only let the user use the abilities of the monster inside its core. A supernatural weapon was different. It boosted the monster's power and changed its form so the hunter could use it. The MC thought the new hunters had gotten soft, and even if things were okay now, monsters would only get stronger later. Then, in the next instant, the tiger came at him. The bastard tried to hit our hero again, but the goat slipped past it without trouble. The system announced flow attack, and the creature actually looked scared. The protagonist spun through the air and then drove another punch at the tiger. The explosive hit was so hard the monster shut one eye from the impact. The shockwave even reached the bystanders and our heroine. Smoke filled the area, and through it the protagonist remembered the Patellus ring's penalty. It fed on the user's fear. Even after getting smashed like that, the bastard still opened its eye again. Then the system announced that the penalty was activating. Patellus was a green-class monster the protagonist had hunted before. If anyone feared it, the thing became almost impossible to beat. Since the ring was made from Patellus's core, its penalty was simple. The first person to feel fear would be taken out. In other words, the first one to lose their nerve would go flying. The MC headed back to the students and asked if Hupun was okay. The big guy said he had at least stopped the bleeding. His companion was still breathing, but he'd lost too much blood, so they had to move fast. The protagonist asked for the radio, saying there had to be a control center. They needed to contact the higher-ups. The professor pulled it from his pocket, and the protagonist took it right away. He turned it on and reported that they had cleared the dungeon, but there were casualties. He added that interference had changed the dungeon from purple to green, and one injured person had a critical wound. Then he suddenly used a code. Our hero said he was leaving the dungeon and told them to send a rescue team immediately. As he gave Hyun's details, Junwoon wondered how an E-rank student knew injury codes and the reporting system. If Junwoon was supposed to be an amateur, who was he really? The protagonist didn't answer, and that only made the guy madder. He started shouting, then got punched right in the mouth. Of course, the one who hit him was the protagonist. While the guy teared up, the protagonist said a supervisor should know how to read the situation. Still, the idiot wanted to keep arguing. That's when the big boss stepped in and warned that one more word would send the extra packing. After that, the professor finally shut up. A few minutes later, outside the dungeon, the students came out. Our hero looked grim as he checked his companion's condition. Woo-shik asked if the protagonist was all right. He said his friend had acted without holding back, and the MC answered that because of that, no one died. The second greatest goat warned that everyone would hear about this soon, and Sikdu would find out too. That was enough for the protagonist. He said a teacher from the school had tried to get rid of him, and a 19-year-old student had lost an arm. Then he asked if Woshak really thought any of that made sense. Seeing that expression, Woshak started shaking. Our hero made it clear if this ever happened again, he would not let it go. As he walked off, the MC added that his friend really wouldn't want to see him like he used to be. A few hours later, the shameless teacher was in Woshak's office. He said there had been problems with the test, and claimed Cha was the one who pushed for the practical exam. He went on to say the test was meant to fix the gap between the other classes and Class E, insisting it had nothing to do with that earlier incident. The director said that even now, Youngmin was still making excuses. Then he snapped, asking if Youngmin really thought he didn't know the test was made to drive our guy out of school. The shameless teacher was shaken. He hadn't expected Woo-shik to know already. For a second he wondered if someone more powerful than Minister Munjin was involved, but pushed the thought away and tried to recover. He insisted the test itself was fine, and that nobody had been forced into the subjugation. Before he could spin more nonsense, the goat cut him off and said the real issue was the sudden switch to a practical exam. Passing needed 60 stars, and Jungmin already knew the special students had no real chance, so it was unfair. Then he pointed out that the MC clearly wasn't normal. He didn't even need to take the exam, yet still got the best result. After that, the teacher claimed the dungeon accident was just a case of interference. Then came one of his biggest realizations. He said Woo-shik had approved the test too. That actually left the goat speechless, because he had approved it. In the end, Woo-shik stopped arguing, and said he understood. He told the teacher to prepare the report. They would review the footage before making a decision. The shameless teacher left the office with a smile. But he froze when Woo-shik stopped him and said he wanted one thing understood. He was not afraid of Minister Monjin. The only person he had ever feared was Junwoo, from 40 years ago. The man asked what that meant, and Woo-shik warned him that if something like this happened again, there would be nothing he could do to protect Junwoo. That warning filled the teacher with fear. Outside the academy president's office, the shameless teacher let out a long sigh. Then he called the minister and said the matter wouldn't get out. Munjin replied that, luckily, Jung-yoon's injury wasn't fatal, so Jung-yoon wouldn't be blamed for the incident. And since Yoon was never an official candidate anyway, and had gotten Professor Choi kicked out, he should be thankful it wasn't worse. The teacher apologized, and admitted he hadn't expected our hero to be that strong. The minister then asked if the protagonist's skill really was enough to justify his admission. Before the teacher could answer, Mo Xiaobei cut him off, and said he'd get straight to the point. As a member of the Parents' Association, he believed the student council candidates were already decided, and he asked for Junmin's thoughts. Scared, the shameless teacher quickly agreed. The minister said that was good. Then he added that Chow had worked hard and shouldn't lose heart, and suggested they have lunch sometime. The minister hung up, and the shameless teacher let out a long sigh. He couldn't understand how a student could be this strong. Yunwoo was way beyond normal students. He was even above seasoned hunters. Still, he decided he had to use this chance. No matter what, he needed to bring Junwoo down. Elsewhere, someone warned the protagonist that this would hurt, but he brushed it off. A second later, the big guy yelled when the doctor pressed a cotton swab against his arm. The nurse told him it was already over, and said not to lie down until it dried, along with a few other instructions. Our heroine mocked her future husband for acting like a baby after beating a green rank boss, and the MC told her to shut up. He wondered if it hurt this much because he hadn't used a supernatural weapon in so long, then reminded himself things weren't like before. The hero complained that she kept popping up and getting on his nerves, and the girl said she'd stop coming if he agreed to help her. He asked if she was seriously still trying to get into the council, and how many times he had to say no. Whether she joined the council or not meant nothing to him. Then someone cut in, saying getting into the student council wouldn't be easy at all. Ye-nu looked surprised, and said she heard he had been moved into the protagonist's room. That was the third biggest goat in the story, and the MC asked how he was doing. The boy said he was fine, but his injuries still hurt a lot. Our hero then asked if he'd heard that the arrogant guy had dropped out. Hen said he found out right after the practical exam. The protagonist said that if someone saves your life, the least you can do is show up and say thanks, but the guy ran off. Hen brushed it off, saying they still survived. The protagonist asked if that was really the right attitude when the guy had lost his arm. That left the boy speechless. Then the goat said his father always told him that as long as he wasn't out, he could overcome any challenge, and since he hadn't been sent to Brazil, he figured things would work out. The MC thought that at first the boy seemed suspicious, but he gave up his arm to save someone reckless, and even 40 years ago, people like that were rare. It had also been a long time since he'd heard that saying. Breaking the mood, our heroine asked why he said getting into the council was so hard. The boy said he heard AN wanted to join, but it probably wouldn't be easy. She asked if it was because she was in Class E, but the goat laughed and said that wasn't the reason. Then he asked if they had ever heard of the Parents Association. That caught both of them off guard. The girl said the way Hen said it made the group sound dangerous, and he told her she was right. There were 5 first-year members in the Parents Association, and together they had 5 children. There were also 5 council spots for each grade. He asked if they got what he meant, and our heroine went pale. He explained that this was a group of powerful parents who had already decided their kids would get those council seats. A little uneasy, An asked if he got in that way too. The boy said no, he only made it in after a reserve spot opened. The protagonist asked if students needed approval to join, and if not, whether they just removed someone else. When Hen stayed quiet, the MC asked what happened to the students pushed out during that process. Our heroine was shocked, wondering if people were really being removed over this. The goat asked if he really had to answer that. Then he looked at our heroine and said it felt strange saying this as a senior, but she'd be better off giving up on the council. She refused right away. Was he really telling her to quit before even trying, just because the Parents Association might hurt someone? Looking at the protagonist, she asked if he didn't think this whole thing was messed up and needed to be fixed. The MC knew the school's corruption was putting students in danger, and yes, he wanted to step in, but Digantiana's return mattered more. So he repeated what he'd already said. Nothing else mattered until he found Xiao. Right then, the boy said she had shown up at the perfect time. Their second heroine, or maybe the main one, appeared behind the protagonist. Yunqi walked over to them. Our hero was stunned, thinking things were suddenly falling into place way too fast. Yunqi stood up with a huge smile and went to greet his girlfriend. He said it had been a while since they'd seen each other, but she ignored him completely and walked right past him toward our heroine. Yunsheng said her sister had already tried more than once to make her leave the academy. Then she asked what Yunqi planned to do now that she was already enrolled and studying there. Yunqi didn't answer. She just stared at her sister. And just like that, a full waifu war started, while the 2 goats watched in awkward silence. The protagonist had no idea what happened between them, but one look told him it was serious. He started wondering if Ayun wanted to join the council just to beat Yunqing. Our heroine said there was nothing else to do, so she was leaving. When the MC tried to speak, she cut him off and said his situation was even worse. For the first time since arriving, Yunqi finally spoke and asked if her sister had been hurt. Ayun looked surprised. Then she walked away saying it was too late to act like she cared. Now, trying to ease the tension, Hyun thanked his friend for coming and asked if the protagonist and Yunqi already knew each other. As they stared at each other, he joked that their first impression probably wasn't great. He then figured he'd better leave before he ruined their date. So he headed out, saying he had things to do. The MC said he wanted to talk to Yunqi, and the 2 left the room together. Watching that, Hyun felt even more uncomfortable about the whole weird mess. Later, in the hospital hallway, Yunqi asked what his problem with her was. The protagonist realized he hadn't prepared for this talk when they first met. He thought about being direct, then considered saying he was a fan to get closer to her, but knew that wouldn't actually help. She said she'd heard he took part in the subjugation during the practical exam. When he tried to downplay it and say Hyun did everything, she cut in, his friend couldn't have handled that alone. She stressed that it was a panic-filled situation, yet a first year managed it, and even the advice he gave earlier wasn't something a beginner would say. The hero was about to make up another excuse, but instead he just said she was way too sure of herself. In a teasing tone, Hyunqi asked if he was seriously trying to provoke her. Janhwa said of course not, he just wanted to know if they'd get along. Trying to end it, she asked if he wanted to join the council or something. She guessed he was probably trying to make connections, but said he didn't need to. His skills already stood out. The protagonist said he had no interest in the student council, but she cut him off again and said she had one last thing to say. Dropping the playful act, she warned him that no matter what he did to get into the council, he should never drag her sister into it. The protagonist said the 2 sisters were really alike, which made Hyunqi frown in confusion. He went on to say that Ayun was the only one who wanted the council seat. He didn't care about it at all. He was only trying to get close to her because he had unfinished business with Sokdu. And then completely out of nowhere, she drove her elbow into his neck and slammed him into the wall. She demanded to know if her sister had asked him for something, and when the hero tried to answer, she told him to speak clearly. She pressed harder. Had a Yeon asked for help getting into the council, or for help taking revenge? Now the hero was getting annoyed and ready to fight back, but it didn't go that far. He only shoved her away, which caught her off guard. She quickly steadied herself, then fired off a kick at him. This time he had trouble blocking it. After dodging another strike, he realized she was seriously skilled. They locked eyes for a second, then moved again. He thought this was nothing like their last meeting. Her level was high, even by dungeon management team standards. Before he could finish that thought, our heroine attacked again. As he dodged, he realized he had really underestimated Yunche. She was insanely fast. He couldn't understand why her street subjugation looked so average when her real skills were clearly much better. She came in again, and he dodged one more time like he was about to counter, except that wasn't his real move. Instead, he grabbed the bandage on his arm, and suddenly flung it at her face. It worked. She was thrown off for a split second, giving him time to grab her by the pickle. He grabbed her by the neck and pinned her to the wall. She glared at him and asked if that move was against the rules. Zhengbo shot back, asking if this school even had rules. She said that for a special student, he had gotten used to this place pretty fast. The protagonist admitted she was stronger than he expected, then asked what really happened in the last subjugation. She told him it felt nothing like he imagined. It wasn't about doing the subjugation well, it was about putting on a show for the crowd. That answer clearly annoyed him. Then she asked why he wanted to talk. Zhongbao said it wasn't a big deal, he just needed to meet Yunche's grandfather, and wanted her to bring some weapons from headquarters. That only made her stare at him. She said there was no way she could take weapons from there. MC said he'd heard they were only display pieces, and since Sokdu ran the support house, getting a few shouldn't be hard. Yunche shut that down right away. There was no way her grandfather would agree. Before he could press further, a woman called out to him. While he still had a hand on the girl's shoulder, the nurse warned him he couldn't fight there. Yunche smacked his hand away, then she turned and left like nothing happened. Zhongbao said he was looking forward to seeing her again, but she snapped that she never wanted to see him again. He just said that would be hard. After all, she was Sokdu's granddaughter. A little later, he went back to his room. Yunsheng asked how things went with Cha, and Zhongbao said it went badly. Yunche said he figured as much. The protagonist asked if her relationship with her grandfather was that bad. Yun looked a little sad, and a little surprised. He said it wasn't exactly bad, but it wasn't warm either. They were more like coworkers than family. That caught MC off guard, so he asked if they really weren't close like family. Yunche said that was right. Then Yunche asked what he had talked to her about. He said he asked Xiaobei to get something for him, but she refused. Yunche said that made sense. His friend had never asked her grandfather for anything before, just being around him was scary. The protagonist asked what he meant. Yunche said it wasn't something he could talk about there. Then he laughed and said the request was doomed from the start. Zhongbao asked if he should just offer her money, which only made Yun laugh harder. He said only one thing would catch her attention. MC asked what that was. Bao Shrang said if he wanted a favor from Yunche, he'd have to make a Yun give up on joining the council. He didn't know why, but he was sure Yunche hated the idea of her sister attending the academy. Zhongbao thought that matched what she said during their fight. Yunche said if a Yun gave up, they might get what they wanted, but the protagonist suddenly told him to be quiet. Someone was passing nearby. A few hours later, somewhere else, our heroine sat alone on a bench. It was the same person who had passed by earlier, and now she was replaying what she overheard from MC and Hoon. She remembered how hard she had pushed herself to join the council so she could get revenge on Sokdu, but with her current skills, she couldn't make it into the council. She might not even graduate from the academy. That was why she needed Zhongguo. He was only a first year, but he was way stronger than he should be, and with his help she could make it through. Still, she told herself she had already lost any chance of getting his help. Then she forced herself to accept it. Things had always been this way, so she'd just deal with it alone again. Until someone walked up to her. It was him, and the first thing he asked was why she was acting so pathetic. He asked why she wasn't heading home since it was already late. She said she was just about to go. Xiaomo said he had one question, was she thinking about giving up? That made Ah Yuan flinch. She asked why he would think that, and he answered like he already expected that response. He smiled, thinking this wasn't how things had happened in the original story. Then he told her he had fought Cha. She was shocked again, and asked what he meant. Xiaomu said he really did fight her, and Yuncheng was even stronger than he expected. That made things messy. The two of them couldn't get along and ended up clashing again, so he decided to change his approach. Instead of asking Yunche nicely, he said he'd threaten her. Ah Yuan just stared at him, confused. She said he was exactly how she imagined, way too aggressive, and asked if he was joking. The protagonist said no, he was looking for Yunche's weak spot. Ah Yuan couldn't imagine what weakness her sister could have. Xiaomu pointed at her. He said Yuncheng's weakness was her own sister. He told Yuan to think about it. Xiao was the council leader, a top hunter, and the granddaughter of the association head. So why would someone that powerful care so much about Ah Yuan? No matter how hard Ah Yuan worked, she shouldn't be able to reach Yunche's level. So there had to be another reason she wasn't in the Hunter Academy. Maybe Ah Yuan's presence could hurt Cha's future, or maybe Cha was scared her sister might take her place. Hearing that, Ah Yuan spit out her juice. She said that made no sense because she knew her own limits. Xiaomu told her it didn't need to be true, it just needed to sound true. That only confused her more. Then he said he'd help her. If she got strong enough to stand against Yun Che, they could find her real weakness. That left her even more stunned. Xiaomu asked if she wasn't confident. She steadied herself, thinking hard about something we still don't know. Then she shouted that she'd do it, and surpass her sister. MC thought this was how it should have gone from the start. He got up and said that was enough talking for today. There wasn't much time for today. There wasn't much time. Starting tomorrow, they'd train so she could become a council candidate before the second semester. Just as she started to ask something, he cut in and said yes, exactly. The Parents' Association and anything tied to it had to be taken down. As he walked off, he asked if she understood. Before he could leave, she called out to him again. With tears in her eyes, she thanked him and said she'd never forget this favor. Elsewhere, at a sushi restaurant, someone asked if their third guy was doing okay. Another said they'd been worried because the boy got full of confidence after making it into Class A. Someone else said this was worth celebrating since Jae Yuan was happy to have passed. Then a man arrived where they were gathered. It was the shameless professor, apologizing for being late, and everyone recognized him at once. One person said they heard there had been an accident during the exam and asked if he was all right. The professor said nothing serious happened. This meeting was made up of the first-year Parents' Association. Xiaomu said they should move on to the main reason for the gathering. With the semester ending, they had to get ready for the admission period, so they would start by checking the documents. After reviewing them, they were supposed to sign. He handed the first set to Tian's father, Hoon. Then he kept passing out the papers to the others there, people with real influence in the industry, until he reached the last one, Jusuk's father, Minister Minjin, who had been a problem from the very start. The professor told them to sign at their own pace, and asked if anyone had questions. Jung did. He brought up the practical exam from a few days earlier, and said he'd heard a special student cleared it alone. Then he asked if there was any chance that boy might run for the council. That question shocked everyone. The shameless professor said our hero had shown no interest, and their children had nothing to worry about. Honestly, he added, it was very unlikely that Junwoo would apply at all. After that, the minister said he had a question too. He asked if the professor had a backup plan in case that guess was wrong. Jumin said, of course he did, and told them not to worry. He'd do whatever it took to make the plan succeed. Smiling, he promised that every one of their children would get into the student council. The next day at the Hunter Academy, Jongwoo walked into class. Right away, someone shouted that he was finally here. A bunch of students rushed over and started firing questions at him. They kept asking how he managed to clear the dungeon by himself, and he could barely keep up. Jengwoo had no idea how things got this crazy. Then he noticed the reason, a poster on the wall saying he ranked first on the test. He thought it was completely ridiculous. Even after several minutes, the class still wouldn't stop questioning him. Jengwoo let his aura out and told them to move. He didn't even know them. That was when the other students realized he wasn't the same old Jengwoo anymore. He walked to his seat, and our heroine noticed him right away. Jengwoo told her he never thought the professor would actually give him a perfect score. She said they don't change test results, so they showed his real score. That at least told him the rankings weren't rigged. Then he asked if she had been doing what he told her. She said yes, then asked how long the physical training would last. Jusuk told her good gear means nothing if her body can't keep up. She got that, but reminded him the final exams were coming soon. He asked if it was another dungeon. Nanori said no, it would be a written test and a sparring match. Jusuk thought the academy's tests were weird. Why did students have to fight each other? Still, he said this was better. She only had to beat one person. Naturally, she asked who. His answer was simple, Jusuk. He was clearly one of the student council candidates. His father was the minister, and after everything he had done, the professor had even tried to fail him. And none of this mess would happen without the Parents' Association backing it. They said council members were picked by exam scores, so there was a chance Jusuk might not make the first cut. If she beat him, she could clear the first stage without trouble. Hearing that, she started thinking it over. Jusuk sent out wonders like to fall. But Job to Kansu's wasn't confident. She said she'd try, and he pushed back. Just try. She quickly changed it and said she'd do it. He liked that answer, then said they'd start martial arts training tomorrow, and if she had time she could bring some friends. Her face changed right away. Quietly, she admitted she didn't have any friends. That made Junwoo look at her with pity. She immediately called him out, asking why he was looking at her like that, when he didn't have friends either. Junwoo asked why she'd think that. He said Wushik was his friend, then tried to think of anyone else. No one came to mind. Then he remembered someone once telling him something, but he couldn't fully recall it. As that memory came back, Junwoo suddenly went quiet. Ayoon asked what was wrong. Was there a problem? Keeping a blank face, Junwoo said it was nothing. He had just lost focus for a second. Back at the hospital where our hero had been before, Yoon was stuck thinking about how boring the place was. At least having his classmates there had helped a little. He figured he might as well watch something on this YouTube channel. He reached for his phone, then noticed his arm was gone. The moment it hit him, his face fell. Then someone came into the room and called out to him. As soon as he saw who it was, his mood got better. He asked if his father hadn't gone to work. The man said he had spoken to the team leader and got some time off. He asked if Hoon felt any better, and Hoon said at least he wasn't in pain. His father told him he had once lost an arm during a subjugation too, but he never gave up on his dream. In the end, that made him an even stronger hunter. He said if Hoon kept training, his left arm would keep improving day by day. Then he pulled something from inside his shirt and said he had found something important. He claimed he could prove the Parents' Association was tied to the accident from 2 years ago. Hoon asked if he was still stuck on that, and his father wondered if even the test had been planned before cutting himself off. After that, he fell silent. Right when the man was about to keep going, Hoon snapped at him. He told his father to stop digging into it. He had already been fired over that investigation, and their family had lost everything because of it. So what was he still trying to do now? For the first time, Hoon really might have gone too far. His father couldn't even answer. Hoon said the truth was simple. No matter how much he investigated, he'd never bring down the Parents' Association, and he'd never hunt again either. When his father tried to respond, Hoon cut him off and said he didn't want to hear another story about his grandfather. No one was going to believe something from 40 years ago anyway. After Hoon left, his father sat on the bed, wondering what he should do next. Somewhere else, Junwoo asked his underlings if they had learned anything new. The chubby one said, classes C and D seemed clean. Junwoo asked about the others, and the boy admitted it was hard to question students from classes A and B. Junwoo knew they were trying to find out who wanted a council seat, but this job was too big for them. Even so, he said they had worked hard and deserved a reward. The boys quickly said they didn't need one. Junwoo told them that when an adult offers money, kids should take it and say thanks. He handed it over and told them to just accept it before he got annoyed. The chubby one looked inside and said it was only 1,001. Junwoo told them not to be shy, they could at least buy a snack. As they left, the boys thought that amount couldn't buy much, and Junwoo muttered that they really were good little lackeys. Watching them go made him remember when he was new, back when even 1,001 felt like a fortune, but he pushed that aside. What mattered now was training A Yunshan so she could beat Jun Shidu-sok. As for the written test, he could only hope she studied. The real issue was the fight. Jun Shidu-sok wasn't skilled, but they still had to be ready for whatever the association might pull. The bigger problem was finding a place to train A Yunshan, since asking Wushik would bring too much attention. Just then, someone called out to him. It was Hyun, happy to see his friend again. Junwoo asked if he had already left the hospital. Sean said he was only back at school to take care of paperwork in the office. Then, after hearing Junwoo was helping A Yuan, he asked how it was going. Junwoo explained everything, and Sean said he got the situation. He pointed out that Class E had limits on using academy spaces, and Junwoo said that was exactly the problem. Sean then asked if he really planned to go against the association. Junwoo said of course, and asked why he was bringing that up. Sean warned him it wouldn't be easy, and could even cost him his life. Junwoo just laughed, saying they'd already survived worse together, so they'd find a way again. Sean admitted he was right. Somehow, they really had made it out of that dungeon. His mind went back to everything that happened as it collapsed, including the moment he stepped in front of the arrogant boy to save him. Remembering all that made him sad again, and he said he sometimes wondered what would have happened if Junwoo had been there during the accident 2 years ago. That left Junwoo confused, but Hyun brushed it off, saying it was nothing, then added that he might know a place where Junwoo could train. He said he could take him to the student council's training academy. Meanwhile, inside the student council office, the shameless professor said he'd be honest. Looking straight at the boy in front of him, he said the one in the most danger right now was Ju-sok. The boy asked what that meant, and Junmin explained that Junwoo might try to join the council. That already shocked him, but Junwoo kept going. Junwoo had passed without even taking the evaluation. And that wasn't all. He had also taken down a green rank monster by himself. Junwoo had seen it, so he had no doubt. That only made the boy panic even more. Shaking, he said his council spot was guaranteed because his father had arranged it. Junwoo warned him that even parents could only interfere so much. Junwoo kept laying out the facts, while the boy begged him to just stop Junwoo. The professor said Junwoo couldn't afford to fall behind in grades. The boy remembered that when he first came to the school, this same man had promised to get him into the council. Junwoo Min told him not to panic because he had the answer key for the written test. All Junwoo Sok had to do was memorize it and make sure nobody found out, because the most important part now was the fight. After remembering how badly Junwoo had beaten him, the boy admitted he didn't think he could win. Junwoo Min said he had a plan. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled something out. It was a bracelet, just like the one Ju-sok had used before against Junwoo. Junmin said it was an unregistered item, not listed with the association, and it was B rank. The boy was stunned. Almost everyone in the school was only D rank, so he instantly understood how valuable it was. The shameless professor said B rank was the minimum level for pro hunters, so Ju-sok should use it in the match. With a grin, the bastard said it was basically a cheat code. Laughing, the boy asked where Junmin got something like that, and the professor said it came from his father. The boy added that he had heard Junmin's father was part of the subjugation. Trying to change the topic, Junmin said that was all in the past. Then he added that he'd called in a senior to help his student adjust to the new power. A moment later, someone showed up at the door, and I was sure it would be Chol. But when he saw who it really was, the boy froze. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was actually our second heroine. The boy got excited, saying he couldn't lose with her helping him. The man told him to follow everything she said because he'd asked for this personally. He couldn't believe she had agreed, and guessed it was because she didn't like the MC. Then he told them to go talk about training. With a hand on her shoulder, the shameless professor told her to look after her junior. She said she would. Elsewhere in the school academy, our hero was sparring with An while giving her fighting tips. Still, she was getting completely overwhelmed and couldn't fight back. Soon she called for a break, saying she couldn't keep up anymore. She pointed out this was only practice and asked if he wasn't being too rough. He said proper training had to be serious. An replied that if they were going all out, then he should teach her how to use abilities too. Everyone used them in battle, and she couldn't depend only on her fists. June said it would be easier to show her than explain. Then he told her to take off her gloves and start using her abilities on him. She looked confused, but he told her to treat it like a real fight, and come at him for real. Then he asked if she thought one punch was enough to beat him. Anen called him crazy, and said she wouldn't use her power on someone unarmed, but June warned her that if she kept arguing, training was over, so she activated her bracelet, and the system approved her ranked abilities. Using her flame magic, she said she wouldn't care if he got hurt. Then she rushed him with fire gathered in her hands. She launched her flames at him, but he dodged with ease. In the next second, he was already right in front of her. The protagonist grabbed her arms and drove a punch into her body, sending her flying. She slammed into the ring ropes. He told her to get up and attack again. This time she used her flames again, and also activated her second ranked skill. Then she charged at him once more. She tried to hit him in close range, and he noticed she had changed her approach. As he dodged, he admitted it was a good try, but then he stopped avoiding her and punched her straight in the stomach. Yang went down again. The MC said she was probably wondering why she still couldn't hit him, even with better range. He explained that abilities had to match her movement. Instead, she was too busy thinking about the next skill. Yuslafian looked confused and asked if that wasn't normal. He said no, that kind of thinking left openings. Rather than focus on how to use a skill, she needed to focus on how to attack. She admitted she still didn't get it. Smiling, he said then she'd have to learn the hard way. As he kept pressuring her, he taught her how to block and strike back. He said that once she found an opening, that was when she should use her full power. He had expected her to give up fast, but she had guts. Now he wondered how long she'd last. Then our heroine suddenly realized something. For the first time, she dodged one of his attacks. She was already setting up a counter, lifting her leg. Then she followed through and slammed a hard kick into his stomach. Even the protagonist staggered and nearly lost his footing. She activated a third-rank skill and rushed him again. But then for some reason the protagonist jumped. The two ended up face to face, staring at each other. That threw her off and she lost focus. Right then he struck her on the chin. The blow left her dizzy and she went down again. The MC said that in a fight, you always look for openings. If she only thought about skills or weapons, she'd never take advantage of them. Then he asked if she understood now why the basics mattered. Still, he could tell she really wanted to beat him. She had thrown an elbow on pure instinct without even noticing. Our heroine said she was still curious about who he really was. He asked why she was bringing that up now, and she said it didn't make sense since they were the same age. She looked at him like she was about to say more, then stopped. Even our big guy got nervous, thinking she might have figured out he was a reincarnator. Instead, she asked if her future husband was some secret agent trained from childhood, and the MC told her to quit the nonsense. Then the Gilwait walked into the academy and said he didn't expect to see them there this early. The protagonist and our heroine greeted Ken, and he asked if things were going well since it had been a while since they used the academy. The girl said she was fine, and that was enough. He said he used to fight his father in the ring all the time, even though he usually lost. Our hero asked what he planned to do next, and he wondered why that question came up so suddenly. He said that even if he left the council, he still had to graduate, and he'd been thinking a lot about that lately. All his life, he wanted to become a hunter, but now that seemed impossible because he had lost an important part of himself. Hearing that, the protagonist went quiet, feeling guilty since he had been in that dungeon too. Then he said it actually wasn't impossible. Yuslafian asked what he meant, and our hero said his friend could still become a hunter. Even without an arm, it could still happen. The boy said he knew the MC was trying to cheer him up, but he shouldn't say that so easily. The protagonist answered that he wasn't saying it lightly. He knew from experience. He had heard about a hunter who lost his right arm during a subjugation, but refused to give up. That hunter kept training and ended up stronger than before, and he always said one thing. Before the MC could finish, Hoon said, as long as someone is alive, they can still find a way. The protagonist said that was right, and when the boy was about to ask who it was, he told him the man's name was Chung and that he died long ago, which was why his friend didn't know him. But then the guillotine said Chung Hoon was his grandfather. Even our big guy was shocked by that coincidence. A few hours later, at the academy training grounds, an explosion went off outside. It was Ju Sok, training with his new bracelet. The bastard said the protagonist should just wait and see what happened to him. Someone told him to calm down and stop getting carried away with his new toy. It was our second heroine. She reminded him the fight was only the second test, and she knew he hated the MC, but if he used too much force, he'd be disqualified. He also couldn't use a technique that still hadn't been shown yet. The boy said he wouldn't need that against our hero, because the MC wasn't strong enough. The shameless professor thought the boy was using his skills well, and bringing in our heroine had been the right call. Smirking, he thought this was the end of the MC's run. But then he remembered that Wooshuk once said the only person he feared was Junwoo, from 40 years ago. Even so, Junwoo kept walking like it meant nothing. He called it the words of an old fool stuck in the past. A few years earlier, at the headquarters of the Subjugation Exam Management Unit, our hero asked if Chung Hoon was around. The person there looked surprised. Then he asked what his boss was doing there so late. The MC said dungeon numbers were down, so he went out for a drink. Wooshek said they had brought Hoon's favorite bottle. Chung Hoon was Team 2's leader, and one of the talented people the MC respected most. The protagonist asked where Hoon's teammates were, and the man said they had stepped out but would be back soon. The MC said they could wait, but Chung insisted on drinking first. The protagonist thought his friend's only flaw was how much he loved alcohol. It had been 5 years since they met and became friends. Before they knew it, he, Wooshek, and Hoon were close comrades. While they drank, our hero asked if he had been busy. The man said he had. Still, he could live with it. And the reason he said that was because 8 months earlier, he had lost his right arm in an accident. He told his friend not to feel weird bringing it up. Accidents were just part of life. The protagonist didn't know how to respond, thinking it was such a waste, since his friend was one of the most gifted people he had ever known. Chung asked if there was any way to learn sword skills with just his left arm, and if Junwoo could teach him. Yuen wasn't sure that would be enough, but Chung said it was way too early to give up. As long as he was still alive, he believed he could find a way, if he refused to quit. After that, Hoon recovered and began his real training. Using a sword left-handed was much harder since he'd always fought with his right, but he still mastered it and proved everyone wrong. His swordsmanship even became stronger than before. He lost his arm. That was proof. Chung was a true master swordsman. Hoon said the training was brutal, but Junwoo told him not to complain, since he was the one who asked for it. Then Junwoo suddenly paused, caught off guard when he saw Hoon still had that sword. Hoon smiled and said of course it's proof of all the work he put in, and one day he wants to pass it to Dong. The guillotine blade was really just the wooden sword Hoon trained with. It wasn't for real combat, but it was perfect for practice. Wooshek pointed out that Dong didn't seem interested in becoming a hunter, so why leave him the sword? Hoon laughed and said he'd hand it to his grandson instead. Junwoo told him he'd better live long enough to meet that grandson. Wooshek joked that saying stuff like that was dangerous. Chung agreed and asked if Junwoo had never seen a movie before. A moment later, they raised their drinks, and Junwoo joked that they should all try their best to get eliminated fast. Outside the cabin, Junwoo asked if Jun had gotten hurt while playing. Hoon laughed, saying he thought it was something serious at first, but then his son's words surprised him. Smiling, he said Jun told him that as long as you're alive, you can always make something work. After that, Junwoo and Wooshik had to listen to him brag about his son all night. Back in the present, outside the academy, someone said he'd left the photo around here somewhere. It was Hoon, and he showed the picture to Junwoo and our heroine. The second Junwoo saw it, he almost laughed. The leader of Camp Zone 2 was a man who loved drinking and talking, and he was also the swordsman closest to perfection in his time, Kim Chung-hoon. Junwoo remembered telling his friend to live long enough to see his grandchildren. That memory left him looking sad. He wished he had never said it. Our heroine asked if Hoon's grandfather had died a long time ago. Hoon nodded and said he'd heard his grandfather was eliminated in an accident. That made Junwoo fall into thought. Hoon asked if something was wrong, but Junwoo brushed it off and said it was nothing. Hoon said he was surprised. Junwoo even knew his grandfather's story. Then he admitted it was hard to believe someone could become the strongest swordsman after losing his right arm. Junwoo said he knew it was possible, and Yoon replied that if he talked to his father, the two would probably get along. Not knowing how Jun was doing now, Junwoo asked if Hyun's father was okay. Hyun said he was fine, but he'd become obsessed with a certain case, and even after Hyun tried to stop him he wouldn't let it go. Confused, Junwoo asked what case he meant. Hoon said it wasn't really Junwoo's business, but a few days ago, Junwoo had asked if anyone had been eliminated during the student council election, and the answer was yes. That shocked both of them. It sounded a lot like the accident before the exam, when the test changed and two people were crushed by rocks. Junwoo asked if Tong had been investigating that. Hoon said yes, and that's why he got fired. It was like a cop trying to control the whole parents' association, so the ending was obvious. Our heroine was stunned by that. After that, he joined the council, but people treated him badly. Yunshur was the only one who welcomed him. Junwoo asked if the association's chosen candidate was tied to the accident too. Yunshur was the group only had 4 members, and the nominees hadn't taken the exam with them. Even now, Yun kept thinking about it, wondering what might have changed if he'd stepped in a little sooner. Our heroine asked if that was why he saved that arrogant boy before. Yun admitted that sometimes he regretted it, and in the end, his dream of becoming a hunter was wasted. Still, if someone had to be eliminated right in front of him, he was glad it had been him instead. That answer made Junwoo smile. Then something suddenly caught his attention. He crouched down, picked something up, and wondered if it was the guillotine blade. Yun said it was the only thing left from Dong, and his father had kept it for years. Junwoo remembered Hoon once saying he'd pass that sword down to his grandchildren. He asked if he could borrow it. Yun said sure but wanted to know why. Yunwoo reminded him that he had called his grandfather's story impossible, and Hyun shrugged, saying old stories always get bigger over time. But Junwoo said this one wasn't exaggerated at all, then asked if Hyun wanted to watch the next exam. A few days later, the written test for general subjects began. The first day of the 4-day final exam. Students sat through the test, and Junwoo was one of them. He couldn't understand a single question. Since enrolling, he'd never really gone to class, so there was no way he'd handle a math test after spending his whole life fighting monsters. Then he glanced beside him, and saw Ju Sok. The guy looked focused, but Junwoo doubted he'd actually studied. He probably got the answers ahead of time and memorized them. If that kept up, Goe Yun could run into trouble. Our heroine didn't look like she was doing great either. Her face was a little strange. Junwoo wondered if she was okay since she looked unwell. Still, she always ranked first on written tests, so he decided to trust her. Then a rolled-up paper smacked him on the head out of nowhere. It came from a teacher, who warned him to stop looking around during the exam. Awkwardly, Yunwoo said he'd focus. Several days passed, and now it was the 4th day. An announcement told all students to listen up, because the last first-year exam, the combat test, was about to begin. Everyone had to gather in the main auditorium. Yunwoo said it was finally time. He told his future wife to hurry, so they wouldn't be late, and she agreed. Once they reached the main gym, Junwoo said the place was packed, and our heroine asked him to wait for her. Then he suddenly looked surprised. He seemed shocked for some reason, even though nothing major stood out yet. The arena was full of people whispering to each other, and reporters were there filming the event. Junwoo asked if the exams were always like this. Yun explained that this was the final test of the semester, and top students usually ended up joining the council. Yunwoo blankly thought that since subjugations were broadcast too, watching gifted students fight had basically become entertainment. As the start was announced, he thought the adults were disgusting for turning kids fighting into profit. Then the announcer said President Wushik would explain the rules. The guillotine stepped up and said he'd go over the rules for the students who had worked hard to get here. First, 2 students would be picked at random, and the winner would move on. With a faint smirk, Janwush realized it was the same format they used in their old subjugation tests. The match would go on until someone surrendered or was beaten. Winners got 1 point, while losers got 0. Anyone with 0 points could keep re-entering, but once you earned a point, 1 loss meant you were out for good. Wushek added that the special gear would block most damage, but not everything, so he warned them not to get carried away or use their powers carelessly. With that, Class A's test began, and he wished everyone good luck. Right after, they drew lots for the first match. 2 random students got picked, and the announcers called them into the arena to get ready. The referee told them to take their starting spots. Then the match began, and the red-haired student rushed in first. Our heroine looked shocked. She said it was amazing, so this was how Class A students fought. Then she asked her future husband what he thought of the match. But when she looked over, she was stunned. Yunwoo was asleep. Even during a Class A fight, the MC called the match sloppy and not worth watching. Since exam prep had kept him up for days, he used the time to catch some sleep. Anen couldn't believe he said that. After seeing what Class A could do, she started wondering just how high his standards were to dismiss it so easily. And yep, those 2 extras never showed up again. A few hours later, the announcer said Class 500's matches were finished. Anen told him to wake up. He stretched and asked if it was over already. She said yes, and now it was their class's turn. The announcer then called for Class E to get ready, because their matches were starting. Right then, everyone started getting up to leave. In seconds, the arena that had been full was totally empty. They were all headed to the cafeteria. The MC asked if their class was really so bad that nobody even wanted to watch. Anaman shot back that he had no room to talk after sleeping through the other matches. Then something caught her off guard. Christine was there, watching the next rounds. He greeted our hero and the protagonist nodded back. Then the announcer moved on to introduce the first Class E participant. Our hero figured he should save his strength, so picking someone average made the most sense. The first match for their class was our heroine against a background student named Jo Hee-pudi. Seeing that Jo Hee-pudi said this was bad. Things weren't going the way they planned, but the girl said she'd handle it. She told herself to stay calm. remember her training, and do what she practiced. Our hero said he wanted 10 straight wins, nothing less. That left Dingen confused, so he explained that their class had 20 students, meaning she should aim for exactly 10 wins in a row. Smiling, she decided she'd do it. The referee told both students to get in position. The match began, and the system announced that Jai could use rank D abilities. Before anyone expected it, our heroine punched her right in the face. The hit dropped her to the floor, and the announcer called that Jai had gone down. That stunned everyone watching. A moment later, the referee gave our heroine the win for round 1. Even Hoon looked surprised. The students started whispering, while the protagonist watched with a proud look. Still, he wondered if she might have gone a little too far. The boys couldn't believe Ahan had knocked someone out without even using an ability. Then she won round 2 as well. Round 3 went the same way. Another easy takedown. The announcer said our heroine was heading into round 4 with 3 straight wins, and several students started asking if she was really from the trash class. Li Yunxing said it was amazing that she'd gotten this strong in only a month. Looking over, he added that she probably had the same kind of talent as her companion. The person he meant was Go Yun-che, who was watching our heroine. He went on to say this test was for first-year Class E, so nobody really cared about it. Then asked if she came because AN was fighting or because of Juswook. She asked what that was supposed to mean, and whether her friend wasn't helping Juswook and AN. Li Yunxing, one person couldn't do everything. One of his juniors told him he'd see something interesting, so he came. Li Yunche looked confused, since she hadn't heard anything about that. The announcer called for anyone who wanted the next round to step forward, but none of the background students moved. He then warned that if no one from Class E challenged her, the matches would end. Then someone raised a hand. It was Jusuk, and the announcer told him to enter the arena and get ready. Seeing that, our hero was surprised. If Jusuk still wasn't scared after watching AN fight, then he had to be hiding something. A few minutes later, the referee told both fighters to take their places. Our heroine realized she was finally facing Jusuk, and remembered that his ability was long range. The instant the match started, Yaeun rushed in. The background character thought she was coming at him full force. Even so, he just smiled. Then an explosion went off in the arena. The students were left stunned, with no idea what had happened. Even our hero looked surprised. He recognized that ability. Yoon turned to Yun-che and asked what she'd taught Jusuk to let him do that. Looking proud, the background character wondered if her gear was the only reason she endured it, then said it didn't matter because her endurance was low. Our heroine realized this wasn't the bracelet he used before, and wondered where he got that power. Juswook said lots of people helped him because of his parents, and that's how he got the item. She asked if he was really proud of that. He said yes because she could never have something like it. That immediately got him angry. He mocked her for getting upset over his comment about her not having parents, but she told herself not to lose control and fall for it. Then she remembered our hero saying the first step in battle was understanding your opponent, so she focused on figuring out his ability. She tried to place that extra skill into a category, and guessed its rank was way above hers. Activating her magic ability, she decided there was only one way to find out. She fired flames at Jusuk, and told herself she had to keep fighting. The bastard just laughed, and asked if she really thought a D-rank ability would matter. Our heroine figured magic-type abilities usually cast at about the same speed, so keeping the fight at long range should help. But then she was caught off guard when Jusuk fired another explosion at her. She managed to block it, though it still knocked her back a few meters. That made no sense to her. Even if he controlled the skill well, it was firing way too fast. Was it really a magic ability at all? He asked if she understood now, then bragged that his power was on a whole other level from people like her. Our heroine realized that if it were magic type, he shouldn't be able to use it back to back without cooldown. So she considered another option, combat enhancement. The only skill she knew that matched was beetle bombardment. She shouted that as she charged him, the extra rushed forward too, saying she'd figured it out, but it still wouldn't help. He struck first, but our heroine blocked it. Then she punched Jusuk in the face. The bastard cursed at Ayo, and she answered that of course it mattered. Once she knew what kind of ability he had. His skill made an explosion when his fist hit the air, so all she had to do was stop the punch from landing. The protagonist thought she was handling it well. If she'd mistaken it for fire-based magic, she never could have closed the distance. Against magic users, the usual move is to look for openings in their defense, since stopping a cast is hard, but enhancement skills need a different answer. With no delay between activations, using anti-magic tactics would just fail. The weakness was in the motion itself. His power needed a big strike through the air, and if she shut that down, she'd take control. Still, our heroine knew her answer wasn't perfect, so she had to stay careful. A moment later, the extra went after Ayun again. She blocked it cleanly. He swung once more, and she stopped that too, then answered with a hit to his head. As she kept countering, she told herself she could do this. She could take Jasok down. Then she grabbed both his arms. The system announced the second form of the flame ability had been activated. Our heroine followed up with a kick, and Joe realized he had to block it. Then another explosion burst through the arena. The extra's attack blasted our heroine back and sent her flying several meters. Jook, annoyed, said she was getting cocky just because she'd learned a little martial arts, and asked if she really thought her arms alone could stop him. As he came toward Aeon, she realized she never knew he could trigger an explosion with just his knee. Standing over her, the extra told her to know her place. The system announced an enhancement-type skill activation, as the bastard declared that she should be eliminated. He moved in to finish her, but someone stepped in and raised a hand in front of him. It was the protagonist, telling him that was enough. If he kept going, he'd eliminate her. The announcer declared Aeon eliminated, and called the MC as the next participant. That bastard sneered that our hero had finally decided to come out. The protagonist ignored him and asked our heroine if she was okay. She said it wasn't over yet, and told him to go back since his turn hadn't come. But our hero could tell she'd been at her limit ever since the first explosion, though he did respect her will to keep fighting. He told her the loss had already been announced, so the match was over. The girl tried to argue, but he cut her off and told her to stop being stubborn. A loss was a loss. After hearing that, Aeonshing finally stopped resisting. A moment later, she stepped out of the arena. When people brought a stretcher, she refused it, and said she could walk on her own. Soon after, the protagonist called out to her. He told Aeon she fought well and shouldn't feel bad about losing. That caught her off guard, and as she walked away, she started to cry. Jutelk, meanwhile, proudly called out to the protagonist. He said he was starting to think the MC wouldn't come out, but our hero ignored that and asked if he didn't think he'd gone too far with Aeon. Jusok brushed it off, saying he held back and even let her leave on her feet. The MC shot back that getting a B-rank skill had made him cocky, then brought up the warehouse when he tried to attack him there. That alone made Jusok flinch. The protagonist went on, saying that wasn't an ordinary ability, and demanded to know where he got it. Jusok asked why he cared. Our hero said he didn't need an answer, he could already guess who gave it to him. That made him remember someone from before, claiming it had all been an accident, and that he was a victim too. The man felt a lot like Junmin, so the MC wondered if the professor was his son. Just then, the second round was announced, and the MC decided to handle it himself. He told Hoon to watch closely, he wouldn't keep giving lessons forever. Hoon stared at the arena, wondering if his friend really planned to fight with only his right hand. Jusok laughed, saying there was a limit to how much someone could look down on others. Was he really going to use just one hand? As his aura flared, Jusok declared he'd beat the protagonist down. Then he activated his ability and launched straight into the fight. Right after that, he fired off a flurry of punches at the MC. Each one set off explosions across the arena. Even students sitting far away felt the impact. Jusok kept pressing, filling the arena with flames. He just kept going, attacking non-stop. Yon pointed out this was only the first match of the year, and it was already this intense. At last, Jusok stopped, laughing. He asked if the MC really thought being a little athletic made him special. To him, only abilities mattered, and no matter how hard the MC acted tough, he couldn't win. The protagonist only sighed, and said kids these days were hopeless. Hearing that, Jusok froze. From behind the smoke, the MC said reckless attacks solved nothing. Holding a wooden sword, he asked why Jusok shut his eyes and threw his power around without thinking. Jusok said that made no sense, asking if he was seriously claiming that the MC cut him off and called him an idiot. His explosions only reached 1 meter, while the arena was far bigger. Because of that, he hadn't needed to dodge even once. Then the MC rushed him, saying he'd teach him how to fight. Jusok was left stunned, thinking this was his chance. He threw a punch at the protagonist, but the moment he did, fear hit him. Our hero had already struck him with the wooden sword. Jusok couldn't understand why his ability hadn't gone off, but he started trembling again. The protagonist stood there expressionless, still using just one hand. Jusok noticed smoke rising from the sword, and nervously asked if the MC had really deflected an explosion with a wooden blade. Jusok told him to attack again if he still doubted it. That finally pushed Jusok over the edge. Wanting to crush the MC and force him to kneel, he started throwing wild attacks again. But then pain hit his face, because the protagonist had landed another clean strike. Even Yoon Cheol was shocked, wondering if the MC had really blocked explosions with a wooden sword. This wasn't like stopping a bullet. Cutting off an explosion at the same instant should have been impossible. Yoon explained that the wooden sword he lent the MC could cut mana. Cheongi asked if that meant he stopped the skill by slicing the mana before the blast formed, and Hoon said that was the only explanation. He then asked if she had any other idea. She asked if he was saying the MC could cut invisible mana with 0.01 second timing, exactly when the skill activated. If someone claimed that was possible, then there were only two choices: either they were lying, or they were like the hunters from 40 years ago, back when the legendary Jen Wu was alive. Meanwhile, Jawisok was already on his knees in front of the MC, unable to understand how he was losing to a special admission student with a wooden sword. He had a B-rank skill and an unrestricted core, yet he still couldn't win. In disbelief, he thought this couldn't be real. If he lost here, his student council status and hunting future would both be ruined. His thoughts started falling apart. None of this should be possible. No matter what, he refused to let it happen. He would beat the MC at any cost. Rising back up, he shouted that ever since the protagonist appeared, his life had been destroyed. Then the system warned that he was activating a new ability. Right after that, he got ready to strike, vowing to crush the MC no matter what. The whole arena shook, and chunks of stone started falling. A warning rang out that he wasn't authorized to use that power, and people started calling for guards to stop him. Yoon wondered what kind of skill this was, saying if it kept going the whole auditorium could collapse. Chao called Juni Sok insane, though she knew she shared some blame for this mess. Juni Sok completely snapped as a dark aura rose from his body. Then a red blast shot at the MC, and the system named the skill Nuclear Explosion. Our hero didn't move as it rushed toward him. Then he lowered into a fighting stance and prepared to counter. The attack really did look like a miniature nuclear blast, and then the screen flashed white as the protagonist's body seemed to burn. A second huge explosion tore through the arena. Even the bystanders still sitting there got caught up when sparks from the MC's counter flew their way. Panicking, they finally ran. The arena was left in terrible shape, and one person was still standing, though no one could tell who it was. It turned out to be Ju Sok, barely upright, and clearly exhausted. He started laughing, almost completely losing it, but the MC was still alive. Now the protagonist was kneeling in front of him, and Ju Sok mocked him, asking how it felt to lose after acting so superior. He walked closer and said he wouldn't forgive him, but the MC should still feel lucky. He didn't want to be the kind of person who eliminated others, so he'd be merciful, and only. But before he could finish, someone struck him. Ju Sok couldn't understand how that person got behind him, and in an instant he was flipped over. He slammed face first into the ground. As he tried to understand what happened, the protagonist told him to stand up. With a colder look, the MC repeated himself. Get up. He was clearly furious now, saying ManhwaCapped crossed the line. ManhwaCapped still had no idea what was happening and struggled to rise, but he was already shaking and sweating. The second he tried to use nuclear explosion again, the protagonist hit him again with brutal force. Ju Sok crashed back to the ground after the blow from our hero. As he tried to push himself up, he muttered that he couldn't breathe. The protagonist told him to stand again. He wasn't finished. Now crying, Ju Sok was terrified of being eliminated. If he got up again, he was sure the MC wouldn't hold back. Backing away, he begged for forgiveness and pleaded with the MC not to eliminate him. He admitted he was wrong and swore he'd never do it again. But the protagonist was still furious. He asked if Ju Sok even understood the power he had tried to use. It was dangerous even on a real battlefield. Because of him, the whole auditorium had nearly been wiped out, and everyone there had to run for their lives. Ju Sok broke down crying, saying he never meant for that to happen. He'd only heard it was strong and didn't know what it really did. The MC, still enraged, said the person who used that skill 4 years ago gave the exact same excuse. Then he asked if Ju Sok knew what happened to him. Trembling, Ju Sok said no and asked what happened. As the protagonist activated a unique ability, he declared that someone like Ju Sok didn't deserve to become a hunter. But even then, the idiot tried one last threat, asking if the protagonist knew who his father was. He warned that if anything happened to him, his father would never let it go. The protagonist didn't care at all and attacked anyway. Then everything seemed to go bad. The panel shattered, and it almost looked like the guy got taken out for real. Still, it was hard to tell because a huge cloud of smoke covered everything. After the hit, people nearby started asking what happened, but no one could see through the smoke. A moment later, they spotted the boy on the ground. Then an announcement said the test couldn't continue, the match was over, and all students had to leave the auditorium. As the message kept playing, the protagonist walked out of the arena, finally without that terrifying aura. Someone then wondered if the sword in his hand belonged to Hoon. It was the director, staring at him with a serious look. Woo-shik said his friend had gone too far fighting a student. The protagonist brushed that off, and told him to stop acting like he was still in his glory days. From now on, he said he'd be more direct, and stop hiding who he was. The director followed, saying those old good times were over, but the MC asked if he really expected him to stay quiet forever. A few hours later, in the men's restroom, someone was holding a phone while Minister Manjin called. The one getting that call was the shameless professor. A few years earlier, our hero was running somewhere in a panic. His face already showed that something was very wrong. At first, we still didn't know what had happened. Then it became clear his team's base was burning. Several people were already down, probably killed or knocked out. There was even a child's toy there, making the whole scene hit even harder. The protagonist was horrified. Chung's sword lay on the ground, and the moment he saw it, he knew it was the blade of the guillotine. That was when real fear hit him. Because when he looked down, he saw something he never expected. 2 people were lying there, with a man holding a woman, and the sight made him collapse to his knees. Right then, several people rushed over and called for the captain. After snapping back, the protagonist demanded answers. One of them said a monster escaped from a blue-rank dungeon, attacked the camp, and used a massive destructive skill. He got furious and said protocol was to clear nearby dungeons first before protecting the camp. then demanded the truth. At last, one of them raised his hand and admitted the three of them were responsible because they failed to clear the dungeon. That only made our hero angrier. It was just a blue rank dungeon. There was no excuse for failing. The man had clearly messed up so badly he couldn't even explain it properly. Then one of the others bowed and admitted Hunter Cha had pushed to go in with fewer people than needed. That was the moment the protagonist completely lost his temper. He asked how many people were told about the mission. The answer was 7. How many actually went? Only 3. The protagonist was livid. He was barely holding back. Then he asked if they usually tried to take loot and supplies for 7 people with only 3. The man insisted this was the only time. He called it an unavoidable accident, caused by dungeon interference. That was where the protagonist stopped restraining himself and said he didn't care whether they stole supplies. But one thing could never be forgiven, and he asked if the man knew what it was. He said he'd never forgive anyone who destroyed the life's work he poured into that camp. Throwing the man down, he forced him to look at the damage and said his reckless greed had destroyed everything. He hadn't survived all those hardships just to see this happen, and asked if the extermination team had been risking their lives for nothing. The man kept telling himself this wasn't his fault. Then he shouted that he never wanted this either, that he couldn't have known dungeon interference would happen, and that he was a victim too. He even begged for another chance, promising to return the profits and help rebuild the camp. The protagonist ignored all of it, activated the guillotine's power, and declared the man expelled from the extermination team. His right to live at the camp and his hunter status were both stripped away. He looked like a different person in that moment, and declared that from now on, Xiaobei would never even dream of being a hunter again. And then what you'd expect happened. You already know. Back in the present, the shameless professor checked his phone and saw 6 missed calls. He cursed Siak, thinking about how many times he had warned the boy to control his power and never use nuclear explosion. Now everything was ruined. The whole country had seen it, and an investigation would probably dig up everything. The worst part was the bracelet wasn't registered, which was illegal, and they might even uncover what happened 2 years ago. He told himself all the blame would land on him, especially with how much power the association had. Then he smashed the mirror with his fist. Not even a sorry for the mirror. Trying to calm down, he decided he had to get the bracelet back. As long as no one learned he gave it to the boy, he might be safe. The minister had his own reputation to protect, and Yun Che had no reason to talk, so he chose to worry about the rest later. Right now, getting the bracelet back came first, but then someone asked if he meant this and tossed the item onto the floor. It was our hero, standing there with a blank expression. Jun Min demanded to know why he was there and asked if he hadn't heard the order for students to return to class. The MC just asked why he was so upset. He said he figured Jun Min was looking for the bracelet, so he kindly brought it to him. During the exam, he had overheard that dangerous abilities above a certain level were supposed to be restricted, but the skill Seok used was so strong the locks couldn't even detect it, and it destroyed the whole arena. So he asked why no restriction had been placed on something that dangerous. The only answer, he said, was that the core had never been registered with the association, and that made the shameless teacher start shaking. If a teacher gave a student an unregistered core, and it caused this much trouble, his life would get very messy. Jun Min snapped back that it was all nonsense, and asked if the boy had any proof he gave Seok that ability. The MC reminded him that before, greed had made him mess with the number of hunters sent out, which led to the destruction of the 2nd District's field. Because of that, the protagonist had cut off all the mana in his body and kicked his team out of the camp. So was it really a coincidence that he was now seeing those same rare abilities again? When the MC mentioned the name of the guy he had beaten earlier, the man asked who he really was, since he even knew his father's identity. Even the protagonist hadn't known Jun Min was Chabei's son, though it made sense since both of them had lived the same way. Right after saying that, he punched the man in the face, saying one student had already lost an arm because of him, and today several more nearly lost their lives. He'd made huge mistakes 2 years ago too, but there was one thing the MC could never forgive. It was anyone destroying what he had spent his life building. Then he said he had one question, and Jun Min had better answer fast. Was he the one who gave Siak the unregistered core? The man stayed silent. Instead, he tried to run and reached for the bracelet to use it against the protagonist. He actually got his hands on it. At first it looked like he was about to attack our hero with it, but that wasn't his real plan. He slammed the bracelet to the floor and started stomping on it, trying to destroy it completely. Then he looked up proudly. Sure, there was no proof left. He mocked the protagonist, asking what he could even tell the police without evidence, and whether anyone would believe a high school student over him. Adults weren't so easy to beat, he said, and this wasn't just about Siak anymore. The boy had also attacked a teacher. According to him, the protagonist's school life was finished because no one would believe him. But then he started shaking again when someone arrived and asked why it was so loud in there. It was the director, here to settle things. Jun Min quickly claimed the president came at the perfect time because the protagonist had threatened and attacked him. He said the MC should be expelled, but Woshek only pointed out that the man had broken the mirror and should lower his voice. Trying to save himself, the man said he broke it by accident, so the protagonist asked if the director heard that. After all, he hadn't done anything and was completely innocent. But Wo Xiaobei said he actually thought the teacher did it. Then he asked if our hero had found any clues. The protagonist tossed the phone to Woshike, who warned Junwoo to be careful. There were still a lot of payments left on it. He added that his boss should really learn how to use a phone. While the MC kept scolding Woshike, the shameless teacher could only stare in shock. As Woshike turned to leave, he asked what should be done. The protagonist said the school first needed to announce what happened. Junwoo couldn't understand why the president was speaking so politely to a student, but Woshike ignored him and called for an official statement, since this involved an illegal request. That instantly made the teacher panic, and he demanded to know what Woshike was doing. He warned that this wouldn't only hurt him. Minister Mongjin would get dragged in too, and asked if Woshike could handle that. Woshike replied that he still hadn't forgotten the accident from 2 years ago. Even if he lost his position over this, he said, at least he wouldn't be ashamed if it had really just been an accident. But something like this happened again, and now he couldn't even look at that man without feeling ashamed. The teacher was left confused. Woshike told him the problem was simple. The teacher still didn't understand how things really worked. He asked if he hadn't made that clear before, saying the only person he ever feared was Junwoo from 40 years ago. Then he thanked Jumon for all his years of work at the school. The man called after the president, but Woshike just kept walking. Woshike admitted it would be hard to tie the teacher directly to the minister, and there might not even be an investigation. The MC said once this goes public, it won't stay buried. So he told his friend to spread the story as far as possible. Since Woshike knew someone in the media, he should have them push it everywhere. Then he asked for one more favor. It was about Chung's son, who got unfairly fired while looking into the case from 2 years ago. Since he was probably waiting for payback, they should give him that chance. A moment later, Woshike asked if the protagonist's arm was okay. He pointed out that the guillotine blade's penalty was rough with the MC's condition, especially after taking a hit there. The system confirmed it. The penalty had activated, so the user would suffer the same condition as the target struck by the weapon's effect. Woshike told him to see a doctor and get medicine, but the MC brushed it off and said he was fine. As he headed out, he asked his friend to handle everything he'd requested. He had something to return, so he'd go on ahead. Watching him leave, Woshike smiled. Somewhere else, Hoon was sitting alone in the square. Then someone said they'd finally found him. It was the protagonist, who said he'd been looking for Hoon for a while. Hoon asked if it had been on purpose. Was fighting with his weaker hand just a way to show him something? The protagonist smiled. He said Hoon's grandfather's story hadn't been exaggerated at all. That's why he wanted Hoon to see it for himself. Whatever Hoon felt now, the rest was up to him. With that, the protagonist handed him the wooden sword. Hoon took it. He stared at the sword for a few quiet seconds. Meanwhile, the protagonist started walking away. Hoon looked like he wanted to say something, but in the end he stayed silent. There was a strange look on his face, almost like guilt, but that wasn't it. He was wondering if he could ever do what the protagonist did with only one arm. Then something happened that was hard to follow. Actually, it was just our third greatest GOAT's father calling him. Yoon looked confused, not sure why his father was calling. Then the man asked if his son was okay. He'd heard something happened at school, and wanted to know if Yoon was hurt. Yoon said he was fine. His father felt relieved, saying work kept him from watching the event. He asked Yoon to come home early, and the boy agreed. But the video was still going around, so his father asked about one boy. The one using a sword only with his left hand, and using the same kind of sword as Hoon. When Hoon didn't answer, his father said it was fine if he didn't want to talk. He was probably tired of hearing stories like that. But then Hoon said he wasn't giving up. No matter what happened, he was going to become a hunter approved by the association. A news report was covering the school incident, and the accident Siak caused that destroyed the auditorium. It also said police were investigating whether the minister had requested the illegal ability. Back at the academy, where the protagonist and our heroine were still training, someone was checking the news online. It was our hero. He thought public opinion was going well, and it was nice that Dong had gotten his job back too. Yoon pointed out that Jonyu had been staring at his phone for a long time. She said people wouldn't stop talking about him, and by now the whole school probably knew who he was. He asked if the same wasn't true for her. People were talking about her even more than him. There were lots of comments praising how long she held out against Siak. Some were even calling her the one-punch girl. Right then, someone walked in and asked if they were still training. It was Yoon, and he congratulated her on joining the council. Our heroine asked what he meant. Even the MC was confused, saying she hadn't officially been picked yet, so it was too early to relax. Yoon just said you never know. Then our hero noticed something was up. Yoon explained that he'd practiced with the guillotine blade every day, but he still wasn't doing well. Because of that, he ran into a small problem. The protagonist said he could explain it, but it wouldn't be easy. If Yoon wanted to reach his grandfather's level, he'd have to go through a lot. Yoon smiled. Easy or not, he didn't care. He wanted to get stronger, so he asked the protagonist to teach him. Yoon warned Hoon to be careful because the MC was scary. The protagonist shot back that if she had complaints, she could stop training with him. Then someone arrived and called for Hoon, surprising the protagonist. It was Hoon's father. He asked if they were his son's friends and said it was nice to meet them. He went on to say he knew about our hero and had been amazed by his fight, especially after seeing him use the same sword style. Then he asked if his name was Jeon-woo, and the MC confirmed it. Back in the past, 3 men were begging the protagonist not to kick them out of the camp. He didn't care and told his team to remove them, but they kept begging for forgiveness. Their pleas went on as the protagonist walked away. The base had been completely wrecked. Then someone called out to him again. They said they'd found a survivor. It was a child. The protagonist thought that 10-year-old had grown a lot and now even had a son. To himself, he admitted it was a complicated feeling. A few hours later, class ended. The students were told that starting the next day, applications for the council would open, and anyone interested should get a form from the office. After that, the other students started talking. The protagonist stood up. He said he and our heroine should apply, then asked if they had to do it that day or could wait until tomorrow. He answered his own question. There was something he needed to check, so it had to be today. At the college office, he and our heroine stopped in front of the door. She asked what was wrong and why he wasn't going in, but he told her to wait because he wanted to check something first. Then someone came out of the office. It was a girl we hadn't seen before. She said she knew who our hero was, the one who beat Jusuk. Meeting someone that famous in person, she said, was amazing. Then she glanced at our heroine and asked if she was the protagonist's girlfriend. Avion instantly blushed and denied it, saying they were only classmates. The girl laughed and said she was joking since she already knew our heroine. She kept chatting for a while, saying she was from Class B. Meanwhile, the protagonist didn't like the way she talked. Then she held out her hand to our heroine, introduced herself, and asked if the 3 of them could be friends. Neither of them answered. They just looked at her with odd expressions. She told them not to be so guarded since they'd be seeing each other often anyway. The protagonist asked why. She said she'd also applied for the student council, so of course they'd keep meeting. Besides, she said, the 2 of them were way too skilled for Class E, and with Sehyuk expelled, there was almost no way the 3 of them wouldn't get accepted. Smiling, our hero said that was very interesting. Sehyuk never applied and got expelled, yet she was already talking like her spot was guaranteed, which meant the results had basically been decided already. With a sharp look, he asked if she was tied to the association. The girl didn't answer right away. She just started to shake. That confirmed his guess, and now he only needed one last proof. That was why he waited outside the office. Anyone trying to join the council had to come here, so it was the best place to spot someone from the association. His plan worked. He found one. But she only froze for a second. Then she smiled and said, anyone aiming to be a school executive should know about the association. Jeonwoo replied that he had people giving him information. The girl said Sehyuk getting removed wasn't some accident, and now she understood why it happened. Honestly, she didn't like him either. Even after getting dropped to Class E, he still shouldn't have embarrassed Class B. She kept going, while Junwoo and Aeun just stared at her like always. Holding out her hand again, she told them there was nothing to be nervous about. Still, the 2 of them ignored her without changing their expressions. Now annoyed, she asked if they were really going to act this hard to get. Being close with Class B students should help them, but the MC said he wasn't so sure. At that, Warren laughed and said he really had no idea how things worked. He asked if fame had made him lose touch, because not every student council member stood on equal ground. The protagonist admitted to himself that she wasn't totally wrong. Even his own friend had been looked down on when he first entered the council. Still, he said it didn't matter if she was from Class B, or even if she made it into the council. He came here to find her, not to make friends. And from the start, she chose the wrong person to challenge. That left the girl confused. He explained that he wasn't applying to the council at all. The one interested was Aeun. Only then did she realize she'd been going after the wrong target the whole time. A few hours later, the focus shifts to a group meeting. They were talking about the shameless teacher and the minister, both now under investigation. These people were part of the association, and they feared everything would blow up if those 2 admitted the association was involved. One woman said that even if the minister kept quiet, the investigation alone could still expose them, and they hadn't come this far easily. A man added that if the truth came out, every association could be at risk, so they couldn't just sit around and watch. Another agreed, saying the director had shown up in the 3rd-year association meeting, and they clearly weren't talking about Director Wushik. That made sense, since Wushik was on the board and had strong influence in the hunting world. But it really wasn't him. Another powerful figure was involved, someone who had built several associations. The same woman said that if things kept going like this, the key was making sure the vice president became an executive. If not, they'd have to change plans. The man said he'd already thought about that, and it would be hard to keep working with Minister. Oh, this was probably Seok's father they meant. The woman asked if everyone there had at least some contract with the minister, and he said they had business ties, just nothing major. Someone else said they'd talked with the minister too, but if that fell through, it wouldn't matter. He had another plan. Even so, it was still humiliating that the department minister was out. Then someone said that depending on who replaced Ju Seok, they might be able to take that empty spot. At that, they all thought of Junwoo. One person asked if it really had to be him. Another said there was no reason to keep him out, but the first argued that bringing in someone with no ties wasn't ideal. The woman from earlier disagreed. No matter how she looked at it, something about this felt off. Junwoo beating Juk-sok was normal enough. The real issue was what came after. With Seep disqualified, the boy could have done nothing and still become a council member. But then the president suddenly stepped in with an official statement. One man said that part was especially strange. The president had nothing to gain by blowing this up. Normally he would have buried the case instead of exposing the academy's problems. Yet he publicly cut ties with the minister, and to them that meant only one thing. Junwoo and the president had some kind of connection, maybe one strong enough for Junwoo to move him like a puppet. One of the men looked at the woman and asked if she was saying that if Junwoo joined the council, the president would stay quiet. They'd tried over and over to reach him, but he never sold himself to them. Now they were stuck on the same side, and even if his power wasn't on the level of the board, he was once one of them, maybe even more useful than Minister O. Most of them seemed pleased by that idea, but one man still looked unsure. His name was Chang-soo, and he wondered if they really meant to throw away Minister O. The project he was working on depended completely on Myung-jin. Without him, he had nothing. So if the minister fell, Chang-soo would be the one hurt most. With everything falling apart, his own position was in danger, and he needed a new way to stay above water. Just then, his daughter called, and he wondered why she was contacting him. Now, he said he was busy, but she quickly told him Junwoo wouldn't be running for the council. That shocked him. This was the same girl who had spoken with the protagonist earlier. It really was her, and she said Aeun was the one applying. She was sure of it because she'd had a teacher confirm it. Right away the man remembered that the heroine was Yoon Chae's sister, and also Sok-doo's granddaughter, one of the most powerful people around. If Junwoo ran, it wouldn't change much, but if Aeun did, the whole situation became different. Someone nearby asked if something was wrong, but he brushed it off. He said he had to leave, his daughter needed his help. Finally, that long conversation was over. In the parking lot, the man took out his phone and called someone we hadn't seen yet. Now we learn who it was when he asked if he was speaking to Yoon Chae. He said he had something important to discuss with her. A few hours later, they met at a restaurant. Xiaobei asked how he got her number, and he said his guild was still one of the biggest in the country, so they had contact info for almost every hunter. He apologized for calling her out of nowhere. She told him to get to the point, since he claimed it was important. He asked if she knew first years were trying to join the council, and whether she knew who planned to run. Xiaobei said she had a guess, even though she didn't like him. The man told her that if she meant the MC, she was wrong. His daughter had confirmed the truth. The one applying wasn't Junwoo. It was a Yeon. That caught her off guard. When she asked where he heard that, he said it came directly from his daughter. He went on to say that ever since Ju-sok got dragged into this mess, he stopped caring about the council, but Chae couldn't do the same. She asked what he was trying to say. He answered that if her sister became a council member, Yoon Chae would naturally have more to worry about. The mess in her family would probably get worse, and if that happened, Sok-doo definitely wouldn't be happy, and that wouldn't end well for her either. Then he said he could help, if she agreed to a few conditions. He added that his demands weren't unreasonable and wouldn't really trouble her. What he wanted was simple: take his daughter on a public hunt, then say in an interview that Horan was her skilled student. Seeing her reaction, he asked if the request confused her. He explained that while his guild was huge in Korea, it still couldn't match the Hunter Association. So if his daughter became both a council member and someone trained under Chabe, that would change things. Chabe asked if that was his real goal. Chabe-su said she was exactly right. Just like Chabe had raised the association's name, Chabe could become the face of the Acres Guild. If that worked, he wouldn't need the minister or director Sok-doo anymore. He admitted his daughter's ability was weak, and that she only reached Class B because he used his influence. Chabe asked why not just hire a teacher for her, but he said that wasn't necessary. Real skill wasn't the point. From the start, his daughter had no talent as a hunter, and as her father, he knew that better than anyone, so he needed the most efficient path. Chabe asked if he was trying to turn his daughter into a mascot, and he said that was exactly the plan. He told her that should explain everything, and asked what she thought. She said he'd mentioned having a plan and asked what it was. He answered that she didn't need to worry. He wouldn't go as far as director Sok-doo. After saying that, he stops himself. Mentioning the director was a mistake, and he tells her not to worry because he only plans to. Chabe cuts him off, saying that won't work on her sister, so he asks if she has a better idea. She says they need to stop her no matter what, even if force is needed. Before leaving, she says there's one more thing. She asks if he told the other parents in the association anything about this. That catches Chabe off guard. Keeping his usual calm look, he asks who would even gain from doing that. A few years earlier, at a funeral, 2 photos were set out. 2 people were kneeling in front of them. One was our heroine, crying. Then someone walks up from behind and says that even after the coffin was closed, they're still acting like this. A woman glares at him, clearly annoyed. She steps right up to him and asks how he could show his face there after everything he did. In her eyes, her daughter's death was his fault, and honestly, she may have been right. She asks if he really thought no one would learn it was all because of him. He doesn't react. Instead, he says he lost his son too. First his son was taken from him, then even his life was stolen, so shouldn't he be the one furious? Hearing that, the woman is shaken, though she's still crying. Her voice starts to tremble, like she's giving up. All she can say is for him to leave. He says he already sent money to her account because of what happened. Then he glances back and sees our heroine staring at him through tears. He calls Chabe over and says it's time to go. Even then, Chabe looks cold, with no emotion on her face. She just turns around and leaves like none of it matters. From this point on, I won't be calling her the second heroine anymore. As he walks away without turning back, the woman keeps shouting that he'll be eliminated sooner or later. Back in the present, our heroine wakes from that dream. Maybe not a dream at all, but a real memory. She thinks about how she's been seeing it again and again these past few days. Then she looks over at an old photo of her family. That's where this video ends. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel.